Good morning. On behalf of the Australian Track Corporation, or ARTC as we're more commonly known, I'd like to welcome you to today's Business Capability Development webinar, the first of which we're hosting specifically for businesses seeking to supply to our construction contractors and their supply chains. My name is Jason Manton and I'm the Supply Chain Manager for the Inland Rail program. One of my passions lies in maximising local business participation in major project supply chains and driving local content outcomes. So it pleases me to bring you today's session. Inland Rail is Australia's largest freight rail infrastructure project. At its core, Inland Rail is a 1,700 kilometre rail line which will provide a fast freight backbone between Melbourne and Brisbane, connecting into the East-West Trans-Australia line and many other regional lines across the country. The delivery of Inland Rail is expected to involve more than 21,500 workers and thousands of businesses at the peak of construction in 2023 and 2024. Our contractors need businesses like yourselves with a capability, capacity and appetite to participate in their supply chains. To date, ARTC has awarded more than $2.2 billion worth of contracts direct to businesses across the country. Furthermore, our construction contractors, in particular Inlink on the Parkes and Narromine section and Transform Rail, who are currently working on our Narrabri North Star section, have spent more than $165 million with businesses local to their project sites and a further $18.5 million with Indigenous businesses across the country. But before we go any further, I'd like to introduce Natalie Mogg, Indigenous Participation Advisor, New South Wales, to provide an acknowledgement of country.
Thanks, Jason. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we are meeting virtually today and pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today for this webinar. Thanks, Jason.
Great, thank you, Natalie. Inland Rail will be built and operated on the traditional lands of many Indigenous nations and their communities. An acknowledgement of country is an opportunity for us to show respect for traditional owners and the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to country. ARTC values its relationships with Indigenous communities, recognising their ongoing connection to country and culture and their place as important members of our regions and cities. Not unlike local workforce and business participation, ARTC is committed to maximising the participation of Indigenous people, businesses and communities in our projects. Are you an Australian business with the capability, capacity and equally as important, the appetite to supply to a mega project like Inland Rail? If you answered yes, today's session is for you. Many of you have likely attended an Inland Rail briefing session before and you may have thought, what's the difference between this session and those that I've attended previously? Well, I guess the main difference is that today's session has been developed specifically for businesses looking to supply goods, services and equipment to Inland Rail's construction contractors now and into the future. Today's webinar is a relatively long one at 4 hours. So depending on where you're located, the session will finish up around 1 PM Queensland time or later if you're in New South Wales or Victoria. To help you get through the session, we have scheduled a number of 5 to 10 minute comfort breaks every hour. Today's session will commence with a short presentation by David Watt, Inland Rail's Head of Commercial, followed by a business capability building session hosted by Steven Vermey from Scarp Vantage Consulting in Wollongong, New South Wales. Today's session is being recorded and will be emailed to everyone that has registered for the session. So if you haven't already registered, please do so today so we can continue the communications with you. You may have noticed that this webinar is a Microsoft Teams live event rather than the traditional Microsoft Teams event. What that means for you is that you can see and hear the content. However, your microphone has been muted, so you will not be able to communicate verbally with us. Should you have any questions during the session, please use the question and answer function located on the right-hand side of your screen. We do have almost 700 people representing just over 600 businesses on the call today. So we are expecting quite a number of questions, which we will try to respond to during the session. However, if we don't get to all of them, they will be saved and we will respond to them shortly. And finalise, we recognise that some of you, particularly businesses in northern New South Wales and Queensland, may have already participated in capability building workshops and mentoring support organised by Inland Rail. The information you hear today really has the potential to be more of a refresher than new information. In any case, Inland Rail is well underway in its planning for its business capability development program for 2022 and 2023, some of which will include participation from our contractors. First up to speak to you today is Dave Watt. David joined the Australian Rail Track Corporation in 2020 as Head of Commercial. He's accountable for the program's commercial strategy, assurance, procurement, and delivery strategy, as well as all procurement and contract management activities and insurance services. David will provide you with an overview of the Inland Rail program, including an update of our contracting and procurement strategy and delivery schedule for our construction projects. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure of mine to be able to talk to you today. Jason says it's a short presentation, so it is somewhat longer than some of the others I've done because there's a lot of information we have to unpack. As Jason mentioned earlier, at its core, Inland Rail is a 1,700-kilometre rail line, freight rail line. It's going to provide fast freight backbone between Brisbane and Melbourne and connect to the East-West Trans-Australia line and many other regional lines across the country. So what are we about? We're about connecting Australia with a freight network that's faster, safer, and more reliable. It will provide a massive change to the supply chain in this country, and it will make Australia more competitive on a global scale. So what are we talking about? We're creating a new reality for Australia. It's we're heading towards a more prosperous nation. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. We're all part of that. Our economy is growing, and Inland Rail is the connection that's going to help with that reality. So the customer requirements that we were at Inland Rail, we were asked to look at, and we were asked to put together into the program that we've got. We needed to get lower transit time and the distance-driven results in reducing operating costs. We needed lower transit time generating value of time savings for our freight customers. The lower transit time being critical for improved reliability to get our freight across the country, especially in the East Coast, and the lower transit times improving the availability of our commodities. Because of the significance of these factors, the route selection has been a major bearing on the overall performance of Inland Rail. There's a lot of talk in media about where Inland Rail, where it goes, where it doesn't go. And the business cases that have been put together and we worked on and developed to where we are at the moment has brought us to the alignment that we're working on. As an example, even relatively small increases in transit time and distance can have a major, significant economic disbenefit. One example of that is in July 2018, we looked at an alternative route for the Narromine to Narrabri section via the Coonamble line. It was proposed that it would add 24 minutes to transit time and 39 kilometres of distance, so distance relative to the 2017 concept alignment. This minor time difference, minor distance, added a capital cost estimated at $56 million. That's just the capital cost. The economic modelling undertaken in late 2018 of this alternate route proposed to go via or close to the Coonamble forecast, produced a $450 million cost over the life of the Inland Rail program. So as you can see, we need to be really careful about where we take the alignment. The slide that you can see up there just gives you a little bit of the drivers that are behind the Inland Rail alignment and what we're trying to get in place. Supply chain efficiency. It's all transport modes have an important role to play in the supply chain in Australia. We're not saying rail is the be all and end all, but however, we need those modes to work together to deliver an integrated freight market. Rail strength is that it can move large quantities of freight over large distances, whereas road is typically more nimble and often has an important role in the first and last kilometre of where you're getting your goods. Australia's East Coast population is expected to grow by 60% over the next 40 years. It's placing significant pressure on existing infrastructure and increasing road congestion in our capital cities. The cost of this congestion is forecast to be around about 20 billion per annum. So right now, for freight transportation, we're heavily reliant on roads, and the freight volume is expected to double by 2030. And that's not long away. Our current freight ratio is almost 70% road and 30% rail. In more efficient supply chains around the world, that ratio is exactly the opposite. So Inland Rail is looking to reverse that ratio over time as the freight demand grows and by addressing Australia's freight challenge. And we are contributing towards making this supply chain more efficient. The question always gets asked, what are we actually going to be moving on Inland Rail? What freight is going to be taken down our tracks, the double stacking, single stacking, however you want to look at it. So our domestic needs drive almost 70% of the business. An efficient freight transport system in the East Coast, domestic and export markets is critical to Australia's future prosperity. The graphic that you can see on your screen at the moment illustrates the general nature of freight that will be carried by Inland Rail and the domestic and export market split. Almost 70%, 66%, of freight carried on Inland Rail is destined for the domestic market. The majority of these goods are intercapital non-bulk freight, such as white goods and beverages. Approximately 70% of Australia's agricultural production is exported and 30% consumed domestically. Inland Rail, in its delivery of this program, will provide a greater flexibility across multiple supply chains, resulting in a boost to national productivity and to regional economies. We'll be helping businesses to become more competitive, we'll give better access to markets, and it'll be faster and it'll be cheaper. So the economic impact, so every project, every program has a cost, but what is the impact of Inland Rail? So the increased scope means for the economy that Inland Rail is a nationally significant infrastructure project. It's going to bring widespread and long-term benefits to Australia. It's also important for our regions at a time when local communities, job seekers, and businesses need it most. Inland Rail is continuing to build momentum across the nation, with most benefits to be felt in Queensland, where there'll be a forecast increase of about 7.8 billion in gross state product. The COVID-19 pandemic has reminded Australians of the importance of a secure and efficient freight supply chain. While the economic recovery and freight supply resilience will be strengthened through the delivery of Inland Rail, and work on this project will generate thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in local investment, boosting regional economies and communities right along the alignment. And we're seeing some of that today. There's already well underway, and it's giving regions a boost to its construction. At the moment, we're revitalizing local economies in regional areas with more than 165 million spent local businesses through the Parks to Narromine and Narrabri to North Star sections since December 2019. More than $2 billion worth of contracts have been awarded since the program started, stimulating new revenue and growth and opportunities for business. And as at the 26th of November, a couple of days ago, 2021, more than 510 live contracts valued at more than $1.87 billion were in progress and being managed by this team. Between 2019 and November 2021, there's 11 rounds of funding, and over 200 community groups received more than $700,000 in funding. So we're identifying and creating opportunities to maximize community benefits during the product delivery and beyond, including investment in employment and education via the Inland Rail Skills Academy. As at November 2021, scholarships awarded to 20 undergraduate students from the University of Southern Queensland, Charles Sturt University, and La Trobe University Victoria as part of the Inland Rail Scholarships Program. Indigenous participation through business capability workshops, access to tenders and cultural heritage tours for more Inland Rail staff, to propose upgrades to local roads, water and pedestrian infrastructure. So there's a lot of things that we're doing apart from just your general construction. So the current state of play, where are we up to now? This is some of the interesting stuff. My team likes to look at these slides more than they like to listen to what we're going to be doing. So Inland Rail's procurement status. This is a fantastic slide, actually. This is probably the slide that when you put up, it tells you what Inland Rail actually looks like and what we've done to date. And without looking at this, you tend to get caught up in your day-to-day grind, and you don't realize that what we have delivered so far. So to understand our delivery approach, we really need to understand the difference between a program and a project. So many people believe a program is simply a longer, larger version of a project. And despite the similarities, they're actually quite different. A project is a specific single task that delivers a tangible output. A program is a collection of related projects that are managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits and control not available from managing them individually. Here at Inland Rail, we essentially have three different types of projects, and all in various stages of progress. We have greenfield, brownfield, and enhancement. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the projects that we've got going at the moment. Our completed project, first on North of that is the Parks to Narromine section in New South Wales. This was commissioned in late September 2020 and is now fully operational. The project involved the upgrade of 98.4 kilometres of existing rail track, including a full rebuild of the rail tracks, rail formation, and supporting structures along the rail corridor. The 5.3 stretch of new track near Parks, known as the Northwest Connection, is also complete and has been transferred to ARTC operations, with trains now using the line. Following completion of Inland Rail, the Parks to Narromine section, which we call P2N, will provide a direct rail link between Queensland, Adelaide, Perth, and Parks and Northwest Connection. This connection will deliver immediate benefits with East-West Transcontinental Line to Perth. Projects we've currently got in delivery, we had got one on the go at the moment, Narrabri to North Star, phase 1, in Northwest New South Wales. Known as N2NS, the section will upgrade 184.5 kilometres of existing rail corridor and construct 1.7 k's of new track near Moree in New South Wales. Due to its scale and complexity, N2NS is broken into 2 stages to enable first phase construction to proceed, whilst planning and environmental approvals are gained for the second phase. Phase 1 includes upgrading 171 kilometres of track along the existing rail corridor. Transform Rail, C4MR, a joint venture between contractors John Holland and C Civil, was announced in November 2020 as a principal contractor for phase 1 works. Transform commenced the construction of N2NS phase 1 in April 2021, and construction activity is scheduled to continue late into 2024. Also, in the blue circles on your screen, they have a number of projects in procurement. So I'll run through these individually. And then at the bottom, K2ARB, we have one project, Kangaroo to Acacia Ridge in Brummelton, yet to be procured. So some dates. These are the 13 projects that make up the program. And as you can see, we're in various stages of development, reference design, detailed design, and heading into construction, obviously some in construction. So these will gradually kick off from the middle of next year through to early 2024. So going state by state. In Victoria, Tottenham to Albury is being delivered by ARTC Interstate Team in Victoria. It's a 305 kilometres of track upgrade delivered in 2 stages. Stage 1, Beveridge to Albury, the major construction is set to begin in mid-2022. Stage 2, the Metropolitan Melbourne, and the study is currently underway to determine the location, configuration and timing of a new intermodal terminal in Melbourne. This is expected to boost the potential gross state product by up to 8 billion over the first 50 years of operation. Community consultation is currently ongoing, and the approvals process is on track for mid-2022 completion. Moving to New South Wales. The New South Wales part of the program is expected to boost potential gross state product by up to 3.4 billion over the first 50 years of operation. As mentioned earlier, the regional communities are already experiencing the benefits through jobs and local spend. We've had 4 New South Wales projects declared as critical state infrastructure by the New South Wales government. We've just completed or going through and got to the first major milestone of our civil works program being out to market. In the Southern Civil Works program, the preferred proponent was recently announced with Acciona and CPB Contractors Joint Venture. CWP Southern covers the section from Narromine to Narrabri, as you can see on the map there. Our Central Works Civil program is the preferred proponent was also announced, which is Freight Connect. It's a consortium led by Lang O'Rourke and includes FKG Group. CWP Central covers the section from N2NS phase 2 near Moree, and then from North Star to Whetstone, just over the Queensland border. Staying with New South Wales, our Narrabri to North Star project. So construction is currently underway on this phase 1 of the N2NS, and the contract for phase 1 was awarded in November 2020, as I said, to Transform Rail, which is again a joint venture between contractors John Holland and C Civil. So far, over 500 direct jobs have been generated from Transform, plus many more to follow for subcontractors and businesses in the region. Inland Rail is committed to achieving a program-wide excellent infrastructure sustainability rating by the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. The Narrabri to North Star phase 1 project achieved an excellent design rating, with 100% of removed bridge structure being recycled and 70,000 sleepers removed and recycled. Last month, in October 2021, we announced a new enhanced mobile telecommunications coverage, which will roll out along the Narrabri to North Star rail corridor, and up to 10 to 15 kilometres each side of the alignment. These enhancements will roll out in partnership between ARTC and Telstra, with a new radio station based in North Star, a new small cell in Copper Creek, an upgrade to existing base station in Gurley, and a new radio base station in Creville. Narrabri Shire Council is developing an industrial and logistics hub as well, an inland port. The New South Wales Government and the Moree Plains Shire Council are developing the Moree Special Activation Precinct. And the Moree Plains is fast becoming the destination of choice for city dwellers flocking to the regions, as reported by Regional Australia's Institute Regional Movement Index. Moree Plains Shire Council alone has grown 55% in the 12 months of September 2021 and 87% in the last quarter. And in fact, Mayor Katrina Humphreys called the Inland Rail the region's jewel in the crown. Still with Narrabri to North Star, one of our recent wins. We like to celebrate the little wins and the big wins. Earlier this month, in November 2021, we unveiled the upgraded track on the Narrabri to North Star section. The first grain train, as you can see in the picture there, was loaded up at this section. When construction started around this time last year, we promised the farmers in the area they would not interfere with farming operations over harvest. And we delivered to that schedule, despite our fair share of unprecedented changes, including record rainfall, COVID lockdowns, and travel restrictions throughout construction. Farmers in the area are looking forward to another strong harvest following last year's bumper season across northern New South Wales, and after some years of devastating drought in the area. Rail infrastructure is critical, it's crucial in providing secure access from paddock to port for growers to market their valuable grain and ensure minimal disruptions to the supply chain at harvest. Some of the community benefits that we've achieved over the program so far are shown in these. We have these up in our office. These slides that come up on the wall, some stats. Every month, ARTC prepare project-specific infographics and communicate to the community and to our team the economic benefits resulting from the project or the program. On the Narrabri to North Star Phase 1, these outcomes from September 20 to September 21 employed nearly 750 people on the project, 111 of those being Indigenous. More than 230 of these people are local residents, i.e. they live within 125 k's of the project alignment. Sustainable employment is a big thing for Inland Rail, and it's great to see that 176, or almost 25% of people employed in the project have been employed for over 26 weeks or more, and a minimum of 15 hours per week. In terms of local business participation, nearly 120 local businesses have supplied to the project from a total of 320 as of September 2021, and 9 of these are Indigenous businesses. More than 45 million has been spent with local businesses and 3.7 million with Indigenous businesses. And these figures will continue to grow as construction continues. For the Southern Works, some program facts as we get into the collaborative framework part of that program, that project. ARTC announced the ACACPB joint venture as the preferred proponent to enter this collaborative framework agreement in September 2021, as I noted earlier. The program will comprise a 50-50 joint venture between Acciona and CPB contractors, a joint venture, ACACB joint venture, and they've been appointed as the preferred proponents to work with ARTC on the development of the Southern Civil Works program. The civil works undertaken in this crucial program will include approximately 306 kilometers of new track, with formations comprising of bulk earthworks, drainage, bridge and viaduct structures, as well as materials and logistics management. With all of this comes a requirement for large local workforce and suppliers to support the delivery and invest money back into the local community and the local economy. From a jobs perspective, peak workforce we're looking at up to 2,000 people, average about 1,200 FTEs. Earthworks, there's a phenomenal amount of work to be done. We've got ballast and capping of 1 million cubic meters. We've got over 1.3 million cubic meters of structural fill and over 3.5 million cubic meters of general fill. On the structures perspective, we've got bridge crossings. We've got 58 new bridges. We've got viaducts, 14 of them, in fact. The bridge and viaduct lengths are ranging from 15 minutes to 3.94 meters. Culverts, 630 culvert bank. And the ACA-CPB joint venture will initially be working with ARTC to review the reference design and develop the construction plans and methodologies ahead of the development of a fully costed proposal for the first works packages in 2022. One thing I will note is that major construction will not start until statutory approvals have been received from New South Wales and the Australian government. The joint venture will now be seeking partnerships with businesses and skilled operators that can support project delivery, such as transport operators, fencing, quarries, earthworks, and electrical companies. And we'll be giving information of how to get hold of the joint venture. So we're already on the Central and Civil Works fact sheet. Central and Civil Works, as you can have had some time to look at, I was finishing off on the last slide. ARTC announced that Freight Connect is the preferred proponent to enter into the Collaborative Framework Agreement, again in September 2021. The Collaborative Framework Agreement between ARTC and Freight Connect, which is the consortium led by Langer Org and including FKG Group, will focus on approximately 85-kilometre section between North Star in New South Wales and Whetstone in Queensland, as well as a separate 14K package south of Marie called Narrabri to North Star Phase 2. Freight Connect will initially be working with ARTC to review the reference design, similar to the Southern package, and develop construction plans and methodologies ahead of the development of a fully costed proposal for the first of the works packages next year. Once again, major construction will not start until statutory approvals have been received from the government. And this is a crucial program of civil works, approximately 100 kilometres of rail corridor within the southern end of Border to Gowrie, North Star to Border and Narrabri to North Star sections of our Inland Rail program. It includes a bridge that spans the McIntyre River, which serves as the border between the two states. We'll also need a large local workforce to support this project, with approximately estimated 500 workers needed at the peak of construction. Again, Freight Connect will also soon be seeking partnerships with businesses and skilled operators to support the project delivery. The same skills: transport operators, fencing, quarries, earthworks, and electrical companies. So continuing our journey along the states from New South Wales, we move into Queensland. The Queensland sections of Inland Rail are expected to boost the potential gross state product by up to 7.8 billion over the first 50 years of operation. We've awarded more than 2.2 billion in contracts across the Inland Rail program, of which 1.5 billion in contracts has been awarded to businesses with Queensland addresses. We recently announced the preferred proponent for the Northern Civil Works program, BHQ joint venture, which is Bilby Holdings, Pty Limited, JF Hull Holdings, and QH&M Burt, which I'll speak to you about on the next slide. The 128-kilometre section from Gowrie to Calgary will be delivered through a public-private partnership, a PPP. The request for proposal RFP process, announced in November 2020, we had 3 world-class consortia shortlisted to bid on the PPP. That's Capstone, which is CPP, Gala, UGL, Div Pacific Partnerships, G2 Connect, it's Acciona, Ferrovial, Centra, and Macquarie, and Regenerate Rail, GS Engineering Construction, WeBuild, former Selenium and Preglia, Clough Projects Australia, Lendy Services Plenary. We will name the preferred consortia in early 2022, with the final contract to be signed later that year with the consortium that will deliver the best proposal. The Gowrie to Hillard and draft environmental impact statement public display closed last month, and the Coordinator General is currently assessing the draft EIS and submissions. Coordinator General has decided not to declare the Calgary to Acacia Ridge project a coordinated project. And we're currently working with the Department of Transport and Main Roads to determine the approvals pathway and if any additional investigations are required. Federal and Queensland governments are also currently examining the terminal or intermodal facility at Acacia Ridge. Thank you. We have the Northern Civil Works program facts. Again, the same snapshot that we've had on the others. This telling us what we're doing in the northern area. The BHQ joint venture, which I mentioned earlier, has entered into a collaborative framework agreement with ARTC for the Northern Civil Works. This is an extensive program of civil works and more than 160 kilometres of rail corridor within the Border to Gowrie section of Inland Rail. It includes more than 30 bridges, spanning over 11 kilometres with more than 900 concrete culvert cells and the use of over 200 pieces of machinery. We'll also need a large local workforce to support this part of the project, with an estimated 950 workers needed at the peak of construction. BHQ will initially be working with ARTC to review the reference design and to develop the construction plans and methodologies ahead, again, with the development of a fully costed proposal for the first of work packages next year. BHQ JV will now be seeking, as of the other civil works programs, partnerships with businesses and skilled operators supporting the project for those really useful skills: transport operators, fencing, quarries, earthworks, and electrical companies. And once again, I'll make the note, we will not start construction until the statutory approvals have been received from Queensland and Australian governments. So as you can see, every state in Australia is involved in ARTC Inland Rail. Today, we have over 511 active contracts with over 1.87 billion of committed spend. And it's not just along the Inland Rail alignment, even Tasmania is involved. It's important to recognize that what next for Inland Rail means a much busier engineering workforce, a more active construction market, increased engagement with supporting industries, suppliers, and support services. So people can now go to the Inland Rail website and access our interactive maps, including the information presented here in this still slide, and filter by contract type and value. There'll be more information on how to do that, but this is your way of getting in and see what's needed on our programs. And an important aspiration for Inland Rail is stimulating growth. As an example of exactly how we are stimulating, you can look at the current slide. Here, we're currently engaged on a total value of greater than 511 contracts, as I said before, 1.87 billion. Breaking that down, we have got construction contracts in the region of 977 million. And you've got ballast and capping, which is going to be in the region of 17, culverts 16, turnouts 84. I'm not going to read all the slide numbers to you, but you can see there's a lot there. We've also got feasibility design. So we're using the engineering market, $148 million currently. And we've got all the service providers across the alignment, range from accommodation to local shops, bakeries, and down to your small coffee van. So there's something in this for everybody. So what you're interested in, what are the supply opportunities on Inland Rail? So we're committed to provide local Indigenous business and social enterprises with full, fair, and reasonable access to opportunities on Inland Rail. ARTC Inland Rail, we are again committed maintaining a current Inland Rail industry participation plan, providing full and fair and reasonable opportunity for capable and competitive Australian entities to participate in the production of these goods, services, and equipment. We have a sustainable procurement policy. We use local suppliers, skills, and labour where possible, and ensure that environmental, social, and economic considerations are embedded in our procurement process and contracts. And we actively promote our social performance strategy. We to responsibly deliver and operate Inland Rail with the least negative social impact possible, while enhancing the benefits that we at Inland Rail can deliver to the people of Australia, both at a local and a national level. So the project opportunities that you can see on the diagram illustrates multiple ways of engaging with Inland Rail. You can talk to us directly. You can talk indirectly to our principal contractors and their supply chains. We have ancillary supply to the Inland Rail supply chains, such as bakeries, fuel, etc. And there's the utilization of Inland Rail following construction. We build it, we use it. I'm sure that most of you will have actually seen version or two of this diagram. This is the forecast of major rail projects that are coming up in the near future between now and 2028. So the updated version of this graph, Adrian Hart, the Associate Director of Construction Infrastructure at the IS Oxford, presented at the 2019 Inland Rail Conference. He identified there was a skills shortage coming, that given the huge spike in major rail projects. The wave tends to go down after 2024, but what we must note is the world doesn't collapse. There's just not many confirmed or likely projects identified beyond this in a manner that can actually be represented in this graph. And bear in mind, this doesn't consider the Olympics. So the decline after 2024 is not going to be dramatic. We are going to be looking for people. We've got a lot of work on. The upswing might not be as sharp either, so this model must be taken as it's intended, as indicative of what's coming. But what it does tell us is that we are going to be in a market where we need you to support us, and we can all have a part of this major project, major program. So we need to work together to maximize the value. We need better connections to the state rail networks, which we're providing with the core skeleton of Inland Rail, joining all the other lines across Australia. We need new enterprise opportunities. We need intermodal access along the alignment to be able to deliver our products. We need the intermodal terminals for Brisbane and Melbourne, and enhanced port connections, Melbourne and Brisbane, which are to be determined in a separate to the Inland Rail scope. So in closing, I'd like to come back to the beginning and say the work that's being done here is truly world-class. We're on our way to a safer, faster, more reliable asset that drives a new reality for Australia. An asset that's improved public safety, greater environmental benefits, and a more comprehensive future-proofing, and better addresses the community concerns. We're doing so with a bespoke strategy delivery that drives innovation and local participation, and with planning approvals that are open, transparent, and incorporate numerous independent reviews of the work that's been done to date. There's much to talk about and more opportunities as we continue to improve. And so we must keep in mind that we are well underway to a dramatic shift in the supply chain capability in this country. And it's a shift that can benefit all Australians. If we continue to listen and learn from each other, we can create a better reality for us in generations to come. So let's have those discussions, get hold of us, and let's work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. There's a lot of information there presented in a very short period of time. Really appreciate your time today to provide all that information to all the participants on the live event. Next up, we have Steven Vermey, Principal of Scarp Vantage Consulting, to provide information on practical and proven ways to promote your business, where you need to go, and what you need to do to register for upcoming opportunities, and key safety and commercial compliance requirements to be eligible to supply to major projects, including Inland Rail. Steven will also teach you how to prepare tender submissions and offer tips on managing contracts, should you have success with your tender submission. Steven is a qualified civil engineer with more than 18 years experience developing tenders and evaluating and responding to tender submissions in government and private sector organisations across Australia. Steven has a strong track record of working with businesses to get them tender ready and is passionate about helping businesses understand what best practice tender preparation looks like. Without any further introduction, I'd like to welcome Steven to the screen to deliver today's presentation on business capability building. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jason, and thanks so much to David for his presentation. It was amazing to see all of the information and all of the upcoming opportunities that we're looking forward to in the next couple of years. And I can say we, because I too was a supplier who needed to tender for work to deliver this supply capability development workshop. And I won't lie, it was a difficult process to submit the tender and try to distill all of the information and figure out what I needed to do to win that tender. So I wanted to say that I was in the same boat as you. So for the suppliers and subcontractors out there that are wanting to do work, I've been in that boat, and here I am delivering workshops and helping you win work through tenders. So just to explain a little bit about me and where I've come from. So I'm a qualified civil engineer by trade. I spent 11 years in the military and I did some time in East Timor, did a lot of horizontal and vertical construction and thoroughly enjoyed my time in the army. Been managing risks for businesses since 2002 in all of the work that I've been doing, whether that's in construction or whether that's writing tenders. I've been helping and partnering with businesses since 2006 and helping them win work through tenders. I also enjoy the outdoors. As you can see, I've got a Roddy and we love going for a walk and getting down to the beach. But why am I here talking to you about winning work through tenders? So I've done a lot of training to suppliers in the last 6 to 7 years. It began in 2012 when I did my first enterprise, my first presentation as part of the entrepreneurs program down here in Wollongong, and 7 or 9 years later, I'm now living down here. I've also done some training in Orange in 2014, Mid-North Coast, New South Wales in 2014 and 15, helped suppliers get ready for the Commonwealth Games work in 2017, worked for Supply Nation and Indigenous Business Australia in 2018-19, flying around Australia helping Indigenous businesses win work under the Indigenous Procurement Policy. And more recently, in 2018, I was in Gilgandra helping suppliers get ready for the Inland Rail works, which is where my journey with ARTC and Inland Rail started. Like David, I wanted to sort of jump to the end of my presentation and let you know what I want you to take away from my presentation. We will be taking some breaks, but fundamentally, I want to help you understand and prepare for and win work. There's been a lot of information that's been disseminated from Inland Rail and more recently with David and his presentation, but what are we going to do with that information? I'm going to help you understand how to digest all of that information in small bites. I'll help you and give you practical ways and proven ways to promote your business. We will jump onto the website and I'll move away from PowerPoint and we'll navigate through ARTC's website. We'll look at Tenderlink. We'll also look at ICN and help you register for upcoming opportunities. And all of the slides that you'll be receiving and this presentation has all the hyperlinks and all of the steps to do that. So you don't need necessarily to take too many notes because you'll get that as part of the tender pack. I'll then teach you as best as I can through this webinar. I would have loved to have been there in each of the towns and shaken hands with you and delivered these training sessions. Originally, we had 11 planned up and down the rail corridor. Thanks to COVID, we're doing this webinar. But I'll do my best to help you prepare tender submissions. We'll then talk about some key safety and commercial compliance requirements that we're likely to see from the delivery partners. And when you win some work, some tips on how to manage contracts a little bit better. I wanted to start with, well, where do I fit into the picture? I'm a supplier, I'm in Canamble, or I'm a civil contractor, I'm in Gilgandra. Where do I fit into the picture and how do I win work and what's in it for me? So I thought the best place to start was this organisational structure. And I wanted to show everyone on this webinar that ARTC Inland Rail is at the top. So it all starts with the Inland Rail team. They can't do that on their own, so they need to tender work to either delivery partners or professional service providers to do work along the rail corridor. And we call those delivery partners. For example, we know that the Transform Rail are currently doing work. We also know that there are professional services business that David did allude to, one of which is Golder Associates, and they do professional services. So as we come down this tree, if we're that civil contractor, we will be looking to deliver some civil works to the delivery partner. Unless we're a program partner directly contracted by ARTC, we won't do work for them. We'll be doing work for the delivery partner themselves. Similarly, if you're a hygienist, an occupational hygienist, you might subcontract to Golder Associates as part of their contract to Inland Rail. If you're not that tier 2 civil contractor and you're that tier 4 civil contractor, that you've got your excavator there in Gilgandra and you want to win work as to Transform Rail, but you just won't be able to do the services for them, you might need to subcontract to the civil company who is subcontracting to the Transform Rail. So this might be you down in this green box here. Or you might have a business that hires plant, that you might hire plant to the excavator operator or to the civil contractor themselves. So this is a really good snapshot of where you fit into the picture, because on this webinar, we might have people in these purple boxes. They might be delivery partners. We also might have that tier 2 contractor as trade packages to the delivery partners. We might have subcontractors, and we might have suppliers that would supply to any one of those proponents. So how can I be involved? There are so many fantastic statistics that David mentioned in his presentation. And again, it's quite confusing. You'll be sitting there in your office and you're thinking, how do I get part, how can I be part of this fantastic project? So remember that there's the program opportunities. So these are the opportunities direct to ARTC Inland Rail. So you've got a contract direct with them. We're talking about project opportunities. So you might be that tier 2 civil contractor that is contracting directly to a delivery partner like Transform Rail. You might be the subcontractor. There are also opportunities with ARTC and Inland Rail to join their team. So if you're an individual that wants to move on from your current employment, you can seek employment opportunities with ARTC directly. For the purposes of today's presentation, as Jason alluded to, we do want to focus on project opportunities. So the suppliers and subcontractors or contractors out there, and how do they win work through tenders from our delivery partners. So coming back to this slide that David had alluded to and had shown us, I want to jump right down into the weeds and put myself in your shoes and to understand how you're going to win work from the Narrabri and North Star Phase 1 project, as an example. I must admit, when I was preparing this package for this webinar, I've done a lot of presentations for various purchasers or buyers out there, but I did say to Jason, I commended him and Inland Rail more broadly on the level of information that is available for the people out there. So what does that mean? That means that when you're sitting in your office and you don't know who the winner is, you don't know who to talk to, you can get that information. And you can get that information from Inland Rail's website, and you can get it from the awarded contracts page. And that's the link there. And we'll go and have a look at that shortly. You can filter by project. If you're not interested in the opportunities down in Victoria, that's perfectly fine. You can filter by a particular project, and then you can sort by contract value to allow you to find the information that is relevant to you. So what could you do right now? You could jump onto the Inland Rail website. You could go to the awarded contracts. You could find contractors or suppliers that have currently won some work. You could introduce yourself. You could follow the links that we're about to do. You could go to their website and you can call them and introduce yourself and say, hi, my name's Steve. I operate a civil construction business in Gilgandra and I'd love to do some work for you. How do I get involved? So let's go ahead and have a look at this particular page and have a look at some of the awarded contracts. So when you click on that link, it'll take you to the awarded contracts page on the Inland Rail website. You can search and filter by projects. So if we are looking at the Narrabri to North Star, and then you can click the contract value and sort by contract value, much like I had shown you in the presentation. You can see that the Narrabri to North Star construction contract is Transform Rail joint venture, and it was awarded in November 2020, and the estimated contract value is above $25 million. You can go ahead and click that link and it will take you to the Transform Rail's website directly to your buyer, so your client that you want to do some work for. We'll come back to this slide and have a look at this in more detail in my next slide. I want to just jump back into the awarded contracts for one moment. So if you are a professional services business and you would like to see what contracts are out there recently that you might be able to do some work for, we can see by sorting in again by the Narrabri North Star, having a look at the contract award date. I've filtered that or sorted that by most recent. If we come down here, we can see that there's the Water Design Services by Indesco Proprietary Limited. If you thought that you could do some work for that business, then you could go ahead and contact them and introduce yourself. So that's one thing that you could do right now to see if you can supply to any of the successful contractors that are currently doing work on any portion of the Inland Rail alignment. We'll head back to the presentation. So Transform Rail. So we've talked about Inland Rail and figuring out who's got the current contracts. So now we're moving down into that delivery partner box, that purple box when we looked at that organisational chart. So Transform Rail, the link is there. You can also find that on the Inland Rail website. The good thing about this particular website is that it has a whole bunch of good information that is relevant to you. It's got information about the delivery partner, who they are, John Holland, Sea Civil, Romberg Rail. It talks about employment opportunities with that joint venture, but it also talks about supply opportunities to that joint venture. And this is what we need to concentrate on as suppliers for this particular package. And remember, this is only one example of one of the delivery partners along the alignment. And you would do the exact same thing when the other delivery partners have moved on from a preferred status and have signed the contract and starting to deliver work. So let's go ahead and go back to the Transform Rail website and have a look through there and have a look at the current business opportunities that you can do right now, and you can have a look at right now. So this is the landing page for Transform Rail, and you can have a read of this in your own time. I'll just scroll down and have a look at the employment opportunities. If you think that you would like to work for Transform Rail, then you can click on this link, Current Employment Opportunities. If you're a business that would like to supply to Transform Rail, and again, remember, I'm like you, I'm a supplier, I'm a subcontractor. Where do I find opportunities? You know, there's so much information out there. Well, the information can be found by clicking this link, Current Business Opportunities. And what we're going to find is that this link takes us to ICN Gateway. Now I'll move back to my presentation and I would like to talk to you about ICN Gateway and what that is and what you need to do to be aware of future opportunities. So as you had seen when I clicked on that Transform Rail opportunities to supply to the Transform Rail, it took us to the ICN Gateway. So the ICN Gateway is Australia's largest business networking platform, and it's dedicated to maximising Australian industry participation in major projects. So this allows buyers to talk with suppliers or subcontractors. So in the case that the example that I'm using, the buyer is Transform Rail, and they would like to talk to the subcontractors or suppliers. And the way that they're choosing to do that is to use ICN Gateway. So this is a place where prospective suppliers or subcontractors need to register to be able to view upcoming work and understand the various works packages that is coming down the pipeline. We'll jump onto the ICN Gateway website and we'll have a look at this in live, and I'll show you the works packages. So the good thing about ICN and the good thing about Transform Rail, they've probably have got over 50 plus individual packages that they need to let when they're delivering this project over the next 4 to 5 years. and again, as a supplier or a subcontractor sitting in Orange or Coonamble, when is this going to happen? When am I having the opportunity to sell my goods or services to Transform Rail? You can get that answer by having a look at the works packages. We'll go and have a look at this shortly. When we do, what you'll see is that the works packages are listed here on the left-hand side, and you can expand and contract the particular works package, and other sub-packages will come up. The packages that are still open are illustrated by a green dot. The packages that have been awarded are illustrated by an orange dot. And some of the packages that have the grey dot with the word closed means that Transform Rail have closed those expressions of interest. They may be evaluating those expressions of interest. They might have already gone to tender for those works packages, or they might be figuring or determining their procurement strategy. And their procurement strategy is based on time, it's based on risk, it's based on urgency of tasks. We'll talk about how to register in ICN Gateway shortly. However, I did want to have a look at ICN itself and take you through that. So what you'll notice when we go to the ICN Gateway is on the right-hand side, there's a nominated ICN contact person. So if you have some further information, specific information about ICN Gateway and how to understand or find out more information about ICN specifically, then you can contact that person there. So as we had seen in the presentation, if we click on Works Packages there in the center, you can see the quantity of works packages that are available for this particular project. There's a combination of awarded, closed, and open opportunities. What I wanted to show you was when you open up and expand one of the packages that have been awarded, the good thing about ICN, it shows you who the awarded company is. That is good for a couple of reasons. One, if you didn't know that the drain installation services for surface drains had been tendered, and you think you might be able to supply services, goods or services for that, then you can contact these people. Also, if you are looking at an upcoming opportunity, let's just pretend that you are looking to supply some material cartage and haulage, but you don't know any information about that particular package. What you can also do with these awarded companies is that you can call them, introduce yourself, and gain some intelligence about what's going on with the project, because they might be on site delivering services at the moment. So this is a really, really handy tip to understand what's happening around your area at any particular point in time. I love this chart. Thank you, David and the Inland Rail team for producing it, because this allows us as suppliers and subcontractors to understand what's going to happen and when. Importantly, we shouldn't be too focused on these dates because they might change. They might be delayed because of approvals, they might be delayed because of weather. But what we need to do is understand when these packages of work may be coming, and then put in our diary some tasks of what you need to do and who to call and to monitor the websites. And I'll get onto that a bit later in the presentation. What I wanted to do is to choose one and talk about the timeline for what's in it for me. For that North Star to New South Wales, Queensland border, what does concept assessment, reference design, detailed design, construction and operation, what does that mean for me if I'm sitting in a small town along the alignment? So let's have a look at that. Remember that this is an example. So I've made up these dates in line with the previous chart. So the concept assessment for this particular package of work has happened in 2020. So as a supplier and a subcontractor, there's nothing more that we could do in relation to providing services for that concept assessment. The reference design has been done. So the professional services business have been working hard to get that reference design done. The current professional services business, so the designer, is doing the detailed design. And what that allows the delivery partner to do is enter the construction phase. And that's likely to occur in mid-2022 and then operations sometime after that. So what does that mean for us? Again, we're sitting in our office in our small town and we're wondering, how can I be involved with a North Star to New South Wales, Queensland border works when construction is likely to commence in mid-2022. So now let me take off my Steven Vermey hat and put on my constructor hat. So as a constructor, their pre-construction team would be putting together tender packages now for the following packages as an example: construction water, survey, general plant hire, material cartage, earthworks, and a whole bunch of others. So we'll start seeing those tender packs come out now to be awarded in 2022. So if I just go back a slide, because remember that they need to start construction. So they need to be ready. They need to put their tender packs together. They need to release the tender packs. They need to assess the tenders and they need to award so they can hit the ground running in mid-2022. So as suppliers, we need to register on ICN to get our name onto ICN so they know who we are. So when they go to tender, they know which businesses can do the work in those locations. In 2023, we might see the asphalt package. We might see concrete panels packages. We might see the ballast package. In 2024, if we're a landscaping contractor in a particular town, then we could possibly see some landscaping contracts come out in 2024. That might be earlier, it might be later. This is just an example. Fencing packages, we might see those in 2024. And coming to the end of the project, if you're in commissioning or in operation and maintenance or site cleaning or demob related services, then we might see some of those tenders come out in late 24, 2025. So I thought I'd put that together just to show you, if you're a particular business like a signage contractor, when might you see those tenders? But I have to stress, you need to register with ICN and you need to ensure that you maintain your finger on the pulse by checking those websites that I've already alluded to, because you can't just wait for something to come to you. You need to be proactive, and I'll give you some further tips and tricks on how to do that. Okay, so let's jump into how to manage yourself in monitoring packages. So if I was a subcontractor waiting for an early works package to come out on that alignment, what I would do in my calendar, I would have a reminder on a weekly basis to check the ARTC website. Do yourself a favour and include the link there. So when you sit down and have your morning tea or coffee, you can just click that link and it'll take you straight to the ARTC website, and you can have a look at the awarded tender packages and you can sort by date released, and you can see what's happened since the last time you looked. If you do that on a weekly basis, you'll have a really good ability to keep your finger on the pulse. What I would also do is check the ICN Gateway website, and I would have a look at the various packages that are, or the package sites, and have a look at if there are any new ones that have been put onto ICN. So we're going to, I'll show you how to register for ICN shortly, but if we have a look at the dashboard, all you need to do is type in Inland Rail, and you can see the different projects that are available in ICN for you to register your interest for. So if you do this on a weekly basis, you'll know when a new package has been uploaded to the ICN, and you could register your interest as soon as that occurs. I made mention of, once you find someone who has an awarded contract, that you should introduce yourself to them. What I would do in my calendar is have a couple of reminders, as I've got there in yellow, for you to call a contractor to introduce yourself. It can be the same contractor on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, and you can have a follow-up reminder to kick off the day. And we all know that you need to work and you need to be on your dozer, or you need to be, if you're doing heritage assessments, you need to be out in the field. So that's why I do all of these in the morning. You might call a different contractor on Wednesday and follow up that different contractor on Friday. And then for the next week, it then repeats. That's just one tip for you to take away in trying to understand more about what's coming down the pipeline that relates to you. So to summarize my first few slides, I wanted to reiterate what David and Jason has said. There are real opportunities and they exist now, and there are many more coming in the future. You do need to take action now. And one of the things that you could do now is to go to the ARTC Inland Rail website and have a look at the awarded contracts. I've also got a link there where you can click on the awarded contracts. This information sheet, which is found on the ARTC Inland Rail website in the information hub, is absolutely fantastic, and it summarises a lot what I have already said to you this morning. One of the biggest things that I think you need to do is understand where you fit into the supply chain. So if you're a small business, and I've spoken with many mum and dad civil operators out there in Gilgandra, in Grafton, in mid-North Coast, how do I win work for this project? You won't be tendering to, it's very unlikely that you'll be tendering direct to Inland Rail. So you need to understand which delivery partner you potentially could work for, or indeed which of the subcontractors you could work for. Then you need to make contact with that prospective buyer. And I've given you a number of tips on how to do that. I would strongly recommend that each of you monitor the awarded contracts on the Inland Rail website, as well as check the ICN website weekly. And also, if you're still waiting for any of the packages to come, still introduce yourself to prospective clients or buyers that might need you. Okay, so the next part of my presentation to help you understand and win more work is, where do I find information relating to Inland Rail? So, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this presentation, there is so much there is a lot of good information on the Inland Rail website, far better than a lot of other buyers out there. And to ensure that we're very clear on the types of opportunities that are available to you, there are two types of opportunities. The first is that we see program opportunities with ARTC. So the contract that you have is with ARTC. If you are seeking project opportunities, then there's a contract between the delivery partner and ARTC. However, your opportunity will be with the delivery partner. So let's go ahead and initially look at, if you are one of the people that would like to do form contract with the ARTC. So for example, you might be a professional service provider that does some heritage assessments, or you might be a designer that needs to bid for work with ARTC and provide them with some advice. So you can see here on the right hand side, there's a little link to Tenderlink, and this is what Tenderlink will look like when you click on it. So Tenderlink is different to ICN. Tenderlink is a website that you can go to register and download tender documents and upload your responses to respond to a particular tender. Inland Rail uses Tenderlink to release their tenders, and this is where you need to go to find those tenders to be able to download them and respond to those opportunities. So step number one would be to go to that tenderlink.com Inland Rail and register for free. And I wanted to stress that subscriptions, well, registering with Tenderlink is free. If you would like to receive customized notifications from Tenderlink, that's how you can subscribe to Tenderlink. However, to get Inland Rail's tenders or any other purchaser that uses Tenderlink, you don't need to pay. You can do that for free. Once you register, and we'll go ahead and I'll jump back onto the website and I'll take you through this. Once you register, after a few steps, you'll get into your profile, and then you need to set up your profile for the types of tenders that you are looking to respond to. And remember, this is directly to ARTC. Once you've clicked your new profile, you'll then be presented with this screen. So you need to choose the location where you would like to set up your profile. So for example, if you can only supply heritage assessments in New South Wales, then you would click New South Wales. If you could do heritage assessments in New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria, you would select all three. And then you would click next step. The next step is to select the types of work that you could do. In this case, I've selected bitumen. You might have heard of the term UNSPSC codes. So these are the codes that relate to the types of work that you could do. Tenderlink doesn't have UNSPSC codes. You just select the type of work that you do by name. And then we click next step. You are then asked to give your profile a name. In this instance, I've said bitumen New South Wales because you might like to create a bitumen Queensland profile. And once you do that, Tenderlink will send you for free any opportunities that relate to bitumen in New South Wales in accordance with your profile. So let's go ahead and have a look at Tenderlink. So we'll just jump back to this particular slide. And this is the landing page for Tenderlink. And remember, these are opportunities direct with ARTC. So these are program opportunities, not project opportunities. This button here, you'll see the registration just there. This is where you fill out the necessary information relating to your business, and you'll receive an email from Tenderlink, which you'll need to then change your password, and then you'll be able to log in to Tenderlink to be able to see relevant opportunities. If you already have a login, or if you are new in registering for Tenderlink, this is your dashboard that you'll see when you log into Tenderlink. All current notices are there on the top left-hand corner, and we can see that there's a current tender to ARTC or Inland Rail for property management services, and it's an expression of interest. The slides that I showed you before is in this particular part where you've got current profiles, and this is where you follow that bouncing ball like the slides I've just shown you. Okay, so the summary of Tenderlink, I only wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because this webinar is focusing on project opportunities, not program opportunities, but I did want to cover off if there were any people on this webinar that wanted to supply directly to Inland Rail. So the summary for Tenderlink is you need to register and it's free. You have to set up your profile. A couple of lessons learned and a couple of feedback questions that we've had from suppliers over the last 6 to 12 months is, I don't know of any opportunities. I haven't been told of anything. One of the reasons for that is if you were seeking program opportunities, you might not have set up your profile correctly on Tenderlink. My recommendation is to set up as many as you need, but initially set up more and set them up more broadly, because you should get more notifications of upcoming opportunities than missing out on that single one that you need. If you're getting too many emails from Tenderlink, then you can amend your profile to ensure that you only get the opportunities that are relevant to you. A tip for Tenderlink is if you select bitumen, if there's no bitumen tenders that come up for Inland Rail, but bitumen is a sub package of a construction project, then you should also select construction or building and construction, because then you might be able to supply to a prime contractor or to a delivery partner. Again, I'd like to stress you'll receive emails for free. Wait for those emails to be sent. Have a look at the email from Tenderlink and see if that opportunity is good for you or not, and you can do what we call a go or a no-go. Would you like to bid or not bid for that particular opportunity? Then you can respond to that opportunity, and we're going to do this later in the session. And you can win and do work. Unfortunately, if you miss out, then you're entitled to a debrief, and we can talk about that a bit later as well. So in short, if you win, that's fantastic, but if you lose, you should always seek a debrief. So coming back to this slide, we've just covered off on the program opportunities and Tenderlink. Now let's have a look at the ICN and the project opportunities. So I'm wanting to continually revisit the actual website, so Inland Rail as well as ICN, because what I've found when I've done these in the regions, when I was in Orange, when I was in Gilgandra, when I was in Grafton, a lot of people that I spoke to, they get quite overwhelmed with where to go and what button do I need to press. So the more times I do it, hopefully, the more comfortable you'll feel with being able to do it yourself. So if we go ahead and click the link into the Inland Rail website, the direct opportunities, so this is what we had just talked about with Tenderlink. They're the program opportunities. Opportunities with our contractors is the project opportunities that we're speaking about. You can see the Inland Rail projects that are available to register in the ICN gateway. There's some hyperlinks there, and you can create a company profile on Tenderlink. On ICN gateway. So if we go ahead and click that, and I'll just jump back to the presentation. So we've just clicked that link, and we need to register and create a company profile on the ICN gateway. So this is an absolute must to be able to be seen by each of the delivery partners or anyone that wants to buy your goods or services. You must register your interest in the Inland Rail projects for each of the projects and for each of the works packages. Let me just say that again. You need to register your interest in individual Inland Rail projects as well as the individual works packages that apply to you. And you apply for the opportunities as they become available. So let's go ahead and look at the steps that you need to take. And then we'll go back onto the ICN and we'll have a bit more of a look around on the gateway itself. So when you click to register, the step number 1 is to join as a supplier. So what you'll be presented with is a decision to make. Do you want to join as a limited package, which is a free package? And there's a number of things that are included and a number of things that are excluded. That's your decision to make whether you would like to get that return on investment, if you would like to get the limited package, or if you'd like to subscribe to a higher package and whether you get that return on investment. So the Basine package is $156 per annum, Be Compelling 600 and Premium is $1480. My recommendation is to always start with the limited package because that will get you off and running, and then you can set up your ICN gateway profile to start responding to expressions of interest directly to the delivery partners, and you can do that now. You can always speak with your ICN consultant that is on one of the landing pages, and they might be able to help you and talk to you about the pros and cons of other packages. Once you have chosen the specific package, this is the dashboard. I recommend to start with the business details, which you can see here. When you click on the business details, there will be a number of different tabs that you should move through and complete. The tabs are summary, capabilities, products and services, locations, contacts, and notification preferences. So let's go ahead and look at each one of those tabs. For the summary tab, there are a few fields that you need to fill out. So the summary, as well as the full description of your business. If you just leave these blank, when the delivery partners search for businesses within ICN, then they won't be able to read about your business. So you need to have a compelling summary as well as a full description so you can make an initial impression. If you pay for a subscription, you have an added level of exposure if buyers use ICN to select contractors or subcontractors. If we move to the capabilities tab now, this is extremely important to get right. So you need to list all of the capabilities that you can do. So you type into this box here what capabilities you can deliver, and then you select them as shown below. Again, if you don't select the relevant capabilities for your business, then a prospective buyer won't know what you can do. If I just jump to the contacts tab, if you don't fill out the relevant contact details correctly, then they might not be able to get in contact with you. So it's extremely important that you do that too. And finally, the notifications tab. So much like TenderLink, you need to set up the email notifications so the ICN gateway can push notifications to you as they come available. So once you go to the notifications tab, you can decide on what type of notifications you would like to receive. Again, my recommendation is fill out more rather than less. And if you're finding that correspondence too much, then you can take off or you can reduce the quantity of correspondence that comes from ICN. So let's go ahead and have a look at that on the website and just have a look at my profile. So if we go back to the dashboard, you can see my profile is 100% complete. There's a search box here where you can type in searching for Inland Rail. So if you get confused on where to go, as I do, if you can't remember where the particular project was within ICN and you've lost the link, then you can definitely search for it here and find it. If we just click into the business details, you can see here that there's a number of different fields that needs to be filled out, and the summary tab, capabilities, products and services, so it's a tick and flick, locations where you provide the services, nominated contacts, and the notification preferences. So for me, I choose not to have my notification preferences. I've got other ways to understand what projects are coming up and what opportunities I want to follow. Hope that gives you a better understanding of ICN to search for project opportunities. So let's summarise. ARTC Inland Rail is the client, and they have opportunities for program opportunities. They also have project opportunities. For project opportunities where delivery partners might be your buyer, you need to come to ICN and set up a profile and register for particular works packages, which is what we're moving on to shortly. I recommend that everyone, supplier, subcontractor, register with the ICN gateway. This is one way that a delivery partner will promote packages of work. The delivery partner will receive expressions of interest from the ICN gateway, and we're going to move on to looking at how to do an EOI shortly. And the delivery partner will go to tender to choose a supplier or subcontractor from the gateway or via their own means. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more later on. So let's now put this all into context and look at our project timeline again. So this is what we looked at before. So we know that the concept assessment has been completed in 2020. The reference design 2021. Detailed design is ongoing. Construction is likely to start mid-2022. What does that mean to us? So what can we do right now? We know that we can go to the Inland Rail website. We can have a look at the awarded contracts. We can go to ICN. We can register, set up our business profile. We can set up our notifications. But I want to know more. I want to know what that means to me. So again, I'm going to put my delivery partner hat on now. Right now, the delivery partner will be tendering if they're not already selected from ARTC. So they'll be submitting a tender to ARTC. They need to know who the suppliers are. So there might be proponents that are submitting a tender to the ARTC. This is one opportunity for you to introduce yourself to those delivery partners. If the ship has already sailed, and for some of the packages, as David and Jason has alluded to, we know who the delivery partners are, or those preferred proponents. They'll revisit ICN to receive expressions of interest because they need to know of the people that they spoke to, the subcontractors that they spoke to when they submitted their tender to Inland Rail. They need to validate that their delivery, that their supply chain is still relevant and is still value for money for them. So some of the takeaway points of the last 30 minutes or so. I strongly recommend that you become familiar with the ARTC Inland Rail website, and there's a lot of good information on there, particularly the awarded contracts. Once again, I strongly recommend that you understand where you fit into the supply chain. When I speak to a lot of the subcontractors and suppliers, they're thinking that their purchaser or their buyer is the wrong one. So you've got to really understand who your buyer is and who your client is. If your client or your buyer is ARTC Inland Rail, then you need to set up your TenderLink portal and ensure your profile and notifications are correct. If your buyer or if your client is that delivery partner, then you should set up your ICN gateway and ensure all of your details have been filled out correctly, and ensure you introduce yourself to prospective clients. So with all the names and all of the information that I've given you already and trying to find out on who's doing what, you can speak to all of those businesses and find out more information about the projects. Make yourself known. Probably my final piece of advice of this session is be proactive as opposed to reactive. Avoid waiting for emails to come to you or to someone to knock on your door. With all the information and the intelligence that I've given you so far, be proactive and introduce yourself to some of those prospective clients. Okay, now we're going to move on to how to respond to opportunities. So we need to gain some intelligence on where the opportunities are, where are they up to, what's in it for me, when am I allowed to tender? So reiterating, on the Inland Rail ARTC's website, opportunity suppliers, follow that hyperlink and you can see a list of awarded contracts that David had alluded to, and also a map of the awarded contracts. So if you're unsure of the terminology, then you can view it by the map itself. It's an excellent source of information. It's got a list of all of your prospective clients right there in front of you, which not many other purchasers do. What I then recommend to you, the suppliers and subcontractors out there, is to form what I call a get list. Who are the prospective clients that you would like to get? Who do you want to win work from? Who are the current and preferred proponents? So write that down in your diary, much like I had shown you on one of the previous slides. Get it into your calendar, get that get list and identify the people that you would like to speak to. And that link to the awarded contracts. Okay, so once we understand that there is, so you've jumped onto the Inland Rail website, you've seen the awarded package, you can see that Transform Rail have won the Narrabri to North Star Phase 1. You're asking yourself, how can I be involved? I've alluded to the fact that there's the works packages. Some are closed, some are open. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can respond to the works packages. What does that mean? So we're clicking on the works package. When you click on the works package, you'll find a particular works package. This example is a general plant hire 2. So it's the second time they've done general plant hire expressions of interest. And this one closes on the 31st of December 2021. And we know that it's open, obviously, because it hasn't closed yet. So for this particular package, when you click on this button here, which is create an expression of interest, it might be as easy as just clicking a submit button. Unlike all of the other tenders that you might have done, those really hard tenders where you have to answer 100 questions and upload all of these documents, this particular one, all you need to do is click the submit button. What that means to you is you have to ensure your ICN profile is 100% complete, because that's the information that the delivery partners will be receiving. For this particular package, all the delivery partner wants is the information that you've set up in your initial ICN gateway registration and profile setup. But not every EOI is that simple. For example, other EOIs might be more difficult, and I'll jump onto the ICN gateway and I'll show you this after I talk you through the process. The one that I'll look at is miscellaneous and any opportunities. Some of the responses might be pre-populated from your ICN business profile, or they might be populated from previous expressions of interest that you've already submitted. When you click on the miscellaneous any opportunities, step number 1 is always have an action list ready, whether that's Microsoft Word, whether you're an old school and you like a diary or have a piece of paper on your desk or post-it notes. Some people like to have a task list, or some people like to have tasks and use Microsoft Outlook and the tasks and the reminders in there. Any of those will work. Step number 2 is read through each of the questions within ICN. There are quite a few yes and no's, and upload a particular document, which you could do right then as you're working through the questions. However, there are others that are a bit harder and might need you to write a response. For those, my recommendation is that you copy those questions into a Word document and you edit those particular, you respond to those questions and you edit those questions in Microsoft Word. And the reason for that is sometimes in portals like ICN, Tenderlink, sometimes they might not have spell checker, they might not have a grammar checker. It might not be easy for you to write and then have it reviewed by your partner or your business manager. So my recommendation, and for every time I assist people responding to opportunities in ICN, is to get all of those narrative questions into a Word document. Draft your responses in Word and have them independently reviewed by the best person to do so. And once they're approved and you're happy with them, you can paste them back into the ICN. So let's go ahead and have a look at that particular expression of interest. So if we come back to the dashboard and let's search for Inland Rail, we're looking at the Narrabri to North Star, and we're looking at the works packages. The general plan hire that we did look at is here. When you create that expression of interest, as I had shown you on the slides, you literally just click submit and it's done. If we go down to the miscellaneous expression of interest, so I believe that Transform Rail have said, you know what, if you can't see your services in these works packages, we still want to hear from you. So please fill out this miscellaneous expression of interest. and then we'll have you on record. So if we do need heritage assessments as an example, then they can go to you and get a tender from you. So let's click that expression of interest. And the reason why I'm doing this is not all of the expressions of interest is as similar or as simple as that general plan hire where you click submit. So this is a really good example of what other expressions of interest would look like. As you come down, there are a number of yes and no questions. They're quite easy for you to read and to make the necessary response. This is what I'm referring to when there's a question and a box for you to write your response. What I recommend is that you copy that particular question and you paste it into a Word document. And I'll come back to this in a second because we're going to work through some things in Microsoft Word. So we're going to paste unformatted text. There's your question. Please upload a copy of your organisation business capability statement. We're going to be talking about business capability statements on the very next slide. So I'll leave that for then. A couple of other yes and no's. This is a pretty easy question in relation to your average turnover. You don't necessarily need to put that in a Word document. You know, you could get that from your profit and losses and from your accountant. You could list those there, no problems at all. Couple of yes and no's, insurances, management systems. We're talking about management systems a bit later on. Coming down here, if you've got yes to sustainable practices, you need to describe what they are. Again, you want to copy that question. Let's put it into a Word document. We're going to be talking about compliance and code of tendering for performance of building work 2016 a bit later, so I'll talk about that a bit later. But again, if that's a narrative that you need to write a response for, then let's go ahead and put that in your Word document. And the last but not least, last question there. So now you can start responding to these individual questions and have them reviewed by the person within your business. You can also do some spelling, grammar, and the like to ensure that what you're writing is compelling and is going to help you be seen. Perfect. Once you've done that, you can save for later if you're working on those Microsoft Word responses, and you can come back to this and it will be shown in your dashboard. If you're happy with everything, you can go ahead and click submit. So I'll do neither. I'll close this. We'll go back to the presentation. Capability statements. There's a lot of discussion around capability statements. And a lot of people say that you need them, which I agree. I wanted to ensure that you understand when and why you need them. So a lot of people think that you just have a capability statement and you submit it in your tender. That's not necessarily the case. However, if, as we just saw with the ICN expression of interest, they do request a capability statement. So I recommend that you develop one if you don't already have one. Why do you need a capability statement? Why does Transform Rail need to know what you do? Well, you need to communicate what you do, where you do it, where you've done it before. It also needs to communicate where you're located, and also that you might be what we call in the tendering industry a low risk contractor or a low risk service provider. So for example, you've got up-to-date insurances and your integrated management system is third-party certified. As I've just shown you, you need to have a capability statement to upload and respond to an expression of interest in ICN. That that response to that expression of interest would go to the delivery partner. They would then suck that information into their procurement system, and they will review your capability statement and the other supporting information that you've submitted. A lot of people ask me, what should be in a capability statement? These are the things that I recommend at a minimum are in a capability statement. You need to have your business name. You need to have a location and contact details, otherwise known as a call to action. What do? If they need to contact you, who do they contact? Have you got an email address that you would like to include on that capability statement, or a mobile or a telephone number? I particularly like the value and mission statement, because that then starts setting you apart from your competitors. Because if you only listed we're a civil contracting business and we can supply excavators, well, so what? How are you different than someone else? So including a value and a mission statement is very, very handy. We definitely want to know what you can do. We call that capabilities. And we want to know where you have done that before. So a delivery partner, Transform Rail team, they want to know that you've done those services before or supplied those goods before. It's good to mention that you have various levels of insurance cover. It's good to communicate what level of certification you have for your systems. There are quite a few businesses out in the regions that I've met that don't have certified systems. So that's the ISO 9001 quality, 45001 safety, or 14001, which is environmental. Depending on the delivery partner, I'm not going to tell you that you need those third-party certifications, because every delivery partner will procure their services, their goods and services in a different way. But if you did have certified systems or systems that have been used on previous projects before, then you would be deemed a lower risk company than someone that doesn't have any systems at all. And I'll talk about certifications and systems. If you're looking at me through the camera and thinking, where am I going to get these from? I have no idea. I'll give you some tips. If you don't have a system, I strongly recommend that you at least have a policy and you demonstrate a commitment to quality, safety, environment. It's extremely important for the delivery partner, and furthermore, it's extremely important for Inland Rail. Finally, we want to talk about your key personnel, who's going to be doing the work. And in the tendering industry, we call this capacity. How are you going to do the work? Do you have one operator? Do you have 10 operators? If you operate a bakery, then how many people work in your bakery? How many pies can you supply? What type of food can your chefs or your employees prepare? A capability statement should absolutely communicate your point of difference. What sets you apart from somebody else? It should catch the eye of the reader, and I strongly recommend that you include photos. It's a lot more enjoyable than just reading text. I also recommend that it shouldn't be too long. I've seen some capability statements, and I'll show you a couple of examples shortly that are quite long. And it just depends on the industry and depends on what they're trying to communicate to the reader. But 6-page capability statement is pretty good. I do recommend to have it professionally printed. And in some cases, if you're going to distribute that electronically, much like uploading it into ICN, it is worthwhile to possibly have that designed by preferably a local graphic designer. I always recommend to have it in PDF as opposed to a Microsoft Word document. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I do get a lot of questions about, well, what's a capability statement? You know, you've told me what I need to have in it, but can you show me some? I love Google. Google is your friend. If you search for capability statement in Google, you'll get a number of different responses. You'll get some advertisements from businesses that can produce them, or you can find capability statements of other businesses that have them publicly available. And I've found 3 for you, and we'll go ahead and look at those. The first one is by a business by the name of Civilcraft. The second is Deckmill. And third is RPS. So let's go ahead and look at those, and we'll have a quick chat about each of them. And the reason why I like to look at other people's capability statements is it gives you a pretty good flavour of what other people are doing, and you might get some tips from them. You might like some things, you might dislike some things when you're producing your own. This particular business, if I just zoom out, has it in A4 landscape. So their first picture is a portrait. Then we're moving into a landscape. We've got the capabilities, which is fantastic. Nice hero shots. Lovely watermarked photo. Key industries that they work in, which is part of the capabilities. Some key statistics. Where they've done it before, which is extremely important to give a sense of we've done it before and we're a low risk business. Commitment to safety, extremely important. Federal Safety Commissioners accreditation, RMS pre-qualified, New South Wales Government for general construction, and they're pre-qualified to those schemes by New South Wales. Corporate social responsibility. This particular business has also included their leadership team to give you a sense of who they are. And as I said in the previous slide, the call to action, what to do, contact details. So that's one example of a capability statement. Let's have a look at Deckmills. So Deckmill, big hero shots. So in this case, they're probably going to go over the 6-page recommendation because they've got very limited text, but this is what they've chosen to do, which is fine. We got vision and we got values. So very similar to the mission and values. Commitment to delivery, some photos of where they've done it before. Page for hero shots. Construction, engineering, accommodation services, how they create relationships, their people, commitment to safety, environment, innovation, Deckmill in the community, and their call to action. And look at the RPS capability statement, and this is for aerial lidar, so spatial data capture, processing and insights. So this is quite technical, this information, so there's a lot of information within this capability statement. So unlike construction, which is generally, we all know what construction is, this type of service is quite specialised, so there's a whole bunch of information on here introducing what this capability is. So it's educating the reader as well. How they do it, the type of work that they do, where they've done it before, and their call to action. So they're just 3 examples of capability statements, all of which have been graphic designed. It doesn't have to be graphic designed, but it does present quite well when you receive them. Okay, so let's now bring it back down to the what's in it for me. Steve's talked to me about Inland Rail. I definitely know that I'm a projects person, so I need to be registering on ICN. I've registered, I've got my business profile, I've set up my notifications. I've seen that there's an expression of interest that I wanted to respond to. and I've been contacted by that delivery partner, or I might not, what happens next? What I need to stress here is that ICN is that gateway for delivery partners to learn who are the suppliers and subcontractors in the marketplace. When they receive your EOIs, it's likely that they'll form what we call a tender list and go to tender to you and to other parties to request your pricing, your people, and your methodology on how you can deliver that work. However, if they don't contact you, which is one of the lessons learned that I've been speaking with Jason and the team about, sometimes you just don't hear from them. And I did want to show you this. So when you read ICN, it is important that businesses registering their interest are aware that the registration does not guarantee that they will progress further in any procurement process. The Transform Rail have broad discretion to suspend, vary, or terminate procurement processes of the Narrabri and North Star Phase 1, decline to consider or review registrations of interest or negotiate with or enter into a contract with any part of the performance of works. What that means is that you need to submit that expression of interest because they need to know who you are. How they go to tender or form their shortlist is up to them. Hence the reason why I'm coming back to this slide. We need to submit our expression of interest in ICN, but you also need to communicate with them who you are. You need to follow up with them and you need to be proactive. The analogy that I use is Transform Rail or any of the other delivery partners. They sit behind a computer much like I do. And in their computer, they've got business cards, and their business cards are stuck to the screen of particular suppliers that they need to do business with, or they'll have a spreadsheet with a bit of paper on their desk. If you're not that business card or you're not on that spreadsheet, then they don't know that you exist. So you need to be in the forefront of their mind. You need to register an ICN, you need to submit the expression of interest, and then you need to follow up your expression of interest. And I'll give you a nice flow chart in a couple of slides to help you with that process. Okay, so now let's assume that you did receive a tender. What's next? So the typical documents that you'll receive are the following: the conditions of contract or the supply agreement. So for those of you that haven't participated in tenders before or large contracts, these are the formalities of us working together, and they're the must-dos in the contract during your contract period. The second thing that you'll see is what we call the tender conditions or the conditions of tender. And these are the administrative elements of the tender. These are the must-dos during the tender period. The next suite of documents that you'll see are the returnable schedules. So these are the things that you need to return to the buyer completed. I've seen and I've heard that some suppliers and subcontractors have returned documents that haven't been completed, that haven't been filled out. Last but not least are the scope documents, the drawings, the works description. This is what the buyer wants you to do, and this is what you need to price. I must, at this point, say that sometimes you'll get this massive list of documents if you're only supplying catering services to a particular work site. You'll get drawings, you'll get studies of koalas, you'll get the green bell frog study, and you'll think to yourself, why is this relevant to me? So if you put yourself in the perspective of a Transform Rail procurement officer, they have 50, 60, 100 packages that they need to what we call let. They need to let those packages out. If they only give you, the caterer, a particular document or only a suite of documents, they might forget to give you one that you might need or you might want to read. So sometimes they just issue everything and it's your job to go through what's relevant for your bid, what's relevant for you to price. And that's the reason why we see all of the documents. I just thought I'd mention that because a lot of people complain about getting too many documents. They don't know where to look, but that's why we come to sessions like this to hear from me to help you break down and how to navigate through those documents. So let's go ahead and look at some documents now. So these are template documents. These have been provided by one of the delivery partners. They're generic. They don't have any specifics within them about a job, but they're brilliant to talk to and train to give you an understanding of the types of documents that you're likely to see. So I'm just going to go and open up my Windows Explorer. So this zip file here is the zip file that you would get as part of your tender pack from a delivery partner. So remember, we're talking about you've submitted your expression of interest, you've been contacted by the delivery partner, now you've been invited to submit a tender for a particular works package. This is what you will receive. You'll get a zip file. This one's a 9 megabytes zip file, and in there is a whole range of documents. So right now, I understand that you're probably feeling overwhelmed. You're like, where do I look? What do I open first? What do I do? I'll give you some tips and tricks in a couple of slides time, but fundamentally right now, I just need you to have a look at those documents and understand, and this is without any of the drawings or specifications, which there'll be a number of other documents that you'll receive. Let's just talk to each one of them at the moment, and then we'll get into having a look at them in more detail a little bit later on. So this is the form to tender. So this is the form that you need to fill out. This is the contract or the hire agreement. This is the returnable schedule for pricing. We've mentioned building code a few times today. So this is the fact sheet that supports what you need to do for the building code. We're going to be talking about that soon. This is the declaration of compliance, invitation to tender. So they're the tender conditions. So they're the things, they're the administrative aspects of the tender. The qualification schedule. So what are the things that you can't do? A quick guide, subcontractor onboarding, and a sustainability questionnaire. So they're the documents that we'll receive as an example, as part of a tender pack, not to mention all of the scope drawings, specifications and whatnot. Okay, so what's in these documents? Let's go back to the presentation. In the first document, that conditions of contract and the agreement, for those of you that haven't formed contract or formed a formal contract with someone, they have things like payment terms. They have things like entitlement to variation. So if something changes from when you submitted your price, what's the mechanism to get more money from your delivery partner? Or what's the mechanism for them to reduce your scope? So variations, how do we change the scope and how do we amend the money? What are the documents to be submitted? As constructed drawings, reports, management plans, what do they want during the contract phase? And the dispute resolution as an example. I've just chosen 4 things. These are the things that we can see in the conditions of contract. And what that means is that allows us to price the risk of the works that we're doing. The second document that I alluded to that you'll see is the tender conditions of tender, has the formal administrative aspects of the tender, due date and time, are you allowed to submit exclusions to the contract, who to contact, if you've got any questions, can you submit alternative tenders? So importantly, if we're bidding to the delivery partner Transform Rail, we don't go to Inland Rail and ask Jason, hey, what's going on with this particular tender? Inland Rail are are not involved in this procurement process, you're speaking directly with Transform Rail, and the person that you need to speak with will be in the tender conditions. What's in the returnable schedules? As you just saw, you'll see the pricing spreadsheet. They might have pricing in Microsoft Word. They might invite you to submit your own pricing in your own format. They'll have quality, safety, environmental questions. They'll also have some questions around methodology, otherwise known as how are you going to do the work for me? And program, how long will it take? And something that what I know that you are very familiar with as subcontractors and suppliers out there in the various towns that I visited, you're very comfortable with things like scope drawings. What do they need? You know specification drawings, and you know how to read them and do the work. My overarching tip with all of these documents is when you receive them, spend the time early in the tender period to identify the ones that are relevant for you. And don't wait till the night before you start doing your pricing and responding, because sometimes the tenders can be quite onerous. It's really important that you attack it early rather than later, because we all know that you've got to run a business and you've got to make the money in your business. However, if you're not tendering and you're not doing that right, then you're not going to win that next job. So I've got a slide here which has some typical generic questions from the delivery partner. So again, every one of the delivery partners will have a different approach to procurement, and whether they're procuring a civil contractor, whether they're procuring a professional services consultant to do some ecological studies, or whether they're procuring a caterer, the questions will differ. One thing that they'll always ask you to respond with is a lump sum price or provide your schedule of rates. They normally ask if you've got any departures to the contract. They should be asking who your team is and whether you've got the capacity to do the work. They should be asking, particularly in the contracting world, what list of equipment you've got and how old that equipment is. So what they're wanting to know is how reliable your equipment is. They might ask for a copy of your insurances, certifications, timeframes of how long it's going to take for you to do your work, methodology and building code compliance. They'll also ask about work health and safety. If you're certified, then you might not have to provide responses to each one of these questions. So one of the benefits of having a third-party certified safety management system to ISO 45001 is it demonstrates to the delivery partner that you've got all this covered. A third-party auditor will independently verify these things outside of a tender period. However, if you don't have that third-party certified system, then you might need to produce evidence of all of these things. Policy, so your commitment to work health and safety, a previous management plan or a prospective management plan for this particular job. Safe work method statements. They'll possibly ask for safety statistics. Again, a tip, if you don't capture that information now, then start capturing it to get ready for the upcoming tender. What's your rehabilitation procedure? Have you had any breaches in safety over the last 1 to 5 years? Have you ever been prosecuted? Does your team do first aid training? What induction processes do you have for your new staff or for any subcontractors that you use? What's your risk assessment process? And importantly, how does that relate to your safe work method statements? Do you have a fitness for work process or program? What about incident management? If something happens on the job site, what's your incident management process? How are you going to notify the delivery partner that there's been an accident? How are you going to notify work cover? What about work health and safety audits and inspections? Do you do those? And as I've already mentioned, those subcontractor processes, not only induction, but how do you ensure your subby does work safely? Let's have a quick look at the building code 2016. So the Inland Rail is subject to Building Work 2016, the building code. So for those delivery partners delivering work, they need to be what's called code compliant. Depending on what the delivery partners do and their procurement strategy, they will determine who in their supply chain need to be code compliant. For the purposes of planning, if you assume that you need to be code compliant, or you could speak with one of those delivery partners. If you're waiting for your package to tender to come up, you can speak to them early and understand whether you need to be code compliant. Came into effect on 2nd of December 2016, and it applies to all Commonwealth funded building work. So any building contractor or industry participant who has tendered or is delivering Commonwealth funded work since 2nd of December 2016 needs to be what's called a code covered entity. It aims at maintaining fairness and productivity in the building and construction industry. And its purpose is to uphold the law and change behaviour to make the building and construction industry fair, efficient and productive. I recommend you to go and have a look at the ABCC website. The link's there on the screen. What does that actually mean for you now? So what do you need to do? You need to be code compliant if you are subject to the building work as defined by the delivery partner when they tender. These are the things that you'll need to have policies and procedures for. How do you prove that you're code compliant? One of the easiest ways, and you need to seek, legal or HR assistance if you need some interpretation of Building Work 2016 or the code, and you need to read the questions that the delivery partner gives you in relation to the code. But fundamentally, if you can prove that you do and you're compliant with the code and you've got an approved modern award, or you've got systems and processes in place, then you can fill out a self-declaration to say that you're code compliant. But as I've already mentioned, I strongly recommend you seek advice from an industrial relations and or legal professional in relation to building code compliance. I mentioned that I was going to come back to work health and safety and templates and quality and environmental more broadly. The first thing that you can do if what you're hearing from me is Swahili, it doesn't make much sense, and you're only a small business, which I know, and I've been out there and I've spoken to many of you. Having said that, to work with these delivery partners and to do work for the Inland Rail, you need to have documentation. So you need to have the quality, safety, environmental documentation to ensure that you do it safely, you do it in an environmentally friendly manner, and that you are good at what you do, that it's of high quality. So our first step is I recommend that you find a business consultant in your network, in your neighbourhood. Try to find one that specialises in quality, safety and environmental, and there are a number out there that do that. If you would like to purchase a template, so templates are good, but you need to customise them for your business, and there are a number of them out there. So let me just click on this particular business. This business is called Compliance Council. They're located in Sydney and they produce some pretty good templates. I've seen quite a few out there in my time doing tenders. So you can come to their particular website, you can go up to products, and you can purchase various documents. For example, a COVID-19 pandemic response kit, that's for free. ISO 14001 environmental management system for $1,200 and the like. You can get some material quality control checklists, RFI register, project quality management plan. I stress that these are templates and you need to customize them for your business. You can also go to a certification body. So if you're wanting some more information about, well, what certification? I've just purchased these templates from Compliance Council and I've got them and I'm implementing them in my business, but do I need to be certified? Then my recommendation is to call one of these certification bodies like PwC that's on the website and have a chat with them about certification, whether that's right for your business or not. If we go ahead and have a look at PwC's certification, so these are independent auditors that look at your quality, safety, environmental documentation and processes and independently certify them to that respective standard. So 9001 is quality, 14001 is environmental, 45001 which is safety. Again, they do certification services that I've just spoken about and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. If you are looking at this and going, wow, there's lots of information, it's going to cost me a lot of money, it does. You might find free templates out there, but just a word of warning that there may be a hidden catch, so make sure you read all the terms and conditions. And something that I commonly say is if it's of poor quality, it's normally free because you get what you pay for. So sometimes it's worthwhile doing your research, making sure that you test the market to ensure that what you're getting is relevant for you and that you can use it in your business. Okay, a couple of slides and then we'll take another break. Okay, so let's go back to the start. ARTC, Inland Rail, awarded contract, you've clicked on the website, you've gone to ICN, you've seen that Transform Rail, is that delivery partner fantastic? You've registered with ICN, you've submitted an expression of interest, and then you've heard nothing at all. So what I thought I'd do is prepare this flowchart for you, and let's talk through it box by box to help you try to understand what's going on and how to get some more information. Okay, so focusing on the first few boxes. So what's going on? You're sitting there, you've submitted your expression of interest, you've been to this session, you've spoken with Jason and his team in relation to community consultation, you've gone to industry brief and you still don't know what's going on. My first recommendation is to go back to the ARTC website with the links that I've given you and see if that answers your question. Sort by awarded contracts, see if you can find the answer there. If you can't find that, well, if you can, fantastic. If you can't, then go to the ICN gateway. Do a search like I showed you, Inland Rail, and see what packages are available. Does that answer your question? Great. If it doesn't, what can we do? Have you spoken to any of the contractors previously? Where do we find out who the contractors are who have won work? Remember, in the ICN gateway under works packages, if there's a closed works package, you can expand that plus and you can see who the successful contractors are. I strongly recommend that you contact them to see if they know anything about what they're doing. Yep, we're in, we're up at Parks and we're doing this, and yeah, there's a lot of activity on site. Does that answer your question? Fantastic. If it doesn't answer your question, go back to ICN and have a look at those awarded packages again and see if there's other people that you might be able to speak to, or identify any other packages that might be relevant to your industry. If you found one, then you make that call and speak to that supplier or that contractor and ask questions regarding the job, and hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, you can always go back into ICN, have a look at some other packages. You can also give the ICN business consultant a call, whose contact details are on the landing page of that particular project. Hoping that flowchart helps you understand on where to go for more information if you've heard crickets. Okay, takeaway points before we have another 10-minute break. If there's no EOI for your package, then I strongly recommend you fill out the miscellaneous any opportunities expression of interest that I had shown you on the screen. This will not only get you in front of the delivery partner, but it'll also help you respond to any future expressions of interest. So remember, Transform Rail are only one delivery partner. We've seen the chart of the work coming up, and there are going to be many more opportunities coming in the future. We need to decide whether our business needs to be third-party certified. So the best way to answer that question is start speaking with delivery partners, and I'm going to show you Transform Rail's documentation, and we can have a look at their documentation in relation to what they think about certified systems. Takeaway point number 2, absolutely develop a capability statement. Get some inspiration from the examples that I've shown you and get on to that tomorrow. You don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. You need to get that information into that capability statement, PDF that document and get it into ICN. You then can spend some money whilst you've already got that in there, and then you can update it with a graphic designer if you so choose. Have a look at those building code compliant slides. Have a good read through the ABCC, speak to any of your legal or industrial relations professionals and get some advice on whether you need to be code compliant. Networking with a delivery partner, start speaking with Transform Rail right now. Start speaking with the other preferred proponents now. We've got those details from Jason. Start networking right now. Create a weekly routine to check on a status of works packages. So if you know that works package is coming up but it hasn't been released yet, set that reminder in your diary to ensure that you check on a weekly basis, so then you know that when that works package is released. And as an insurance policy, you should get those notifications from ICN. Fantastic. Another 10-minute stretch break. Thanks for listening so far. We're on the home stretch now. Hi everyone, welcome back. Got about 20 slides to go and nearing the end of this webinar, and then we'll open it up for questions if we have time. So the next part of my presentation is around key safety and commercial compliance requirements. So the thing that I would like for you to take away right now is that every one of the delivery partners will be different. So what I mentioned to you here, I've tried to ensure that it applies to everyone. However, the only way that you know what you need to do for your particular tender is to submit your expression of interest through ICN, get onto the tender list with the delivery partner, analyze those tender documents and see exactly what you need to do. The first is the Rail Industry Worker Program. So there's a lot of information on these next couple of slides, but it's super important for you to understand if this applies to you and if you see it as part of your delivery, part of your tender pack to the delivery partner. So what is it? It's the National Competency Management Framework for all rail workers across Australia. It's for all programs participating rail network operators require workers to maintain a RIW card to demonstrate competency to understand rail safety work on their networks. To meet regulatory requirements and complies with the Rail Safety National Law, and it's owned by the ARA and endorsed by all members, member organisations. You can get some more information by following those YouTube and you can also got a point of contact there. What is the card? It's an identification card which includes a link to an electronic record of a worker's detail as relevant to the work on that rail network. It includes personal information, medical assessment status, competencies, accreditations, and the like. Each worker is assigned specific roles aligned to their competencies. Workers are unable to apply for a card without doing so through a company registered in the RIW system. So if it applies for you, workers with the roles identified in the rail safety worker and undertake rail safety work in the rail corridor require this card. Some numbers there in terms of the subscription and the approximate costs and some of the competencies that are required. Again, you need to determine whether it's relevant for you, and the best place to start is to read this information on these slides and then validate in that delivery partner tender whether it applies to you. Work health and safety. So this is super important. So much like the building code, the Federal Safety Commissioner so Work Health and Safety Accreditation Scheme applies to inland rail work. What that means is any work above $4 million, you need to be certified under the Federal Safety Commissioner accreditation. So the delivery partners will need to hold that accreditation or that certification. So what does that mean to us as the construction contractors or subcontractors? So what it means is that we need to have safety management systems and policies in place that demonstrate that we're operating a safe work environment. Depending on the delivery partner's approach to the procurement and how they approach FSC compliance through their supply chain, that will depend on individual delivery partners. Suffice to say, and irrespective whether a job is under the Work Health and Safety Accreditation Scheme, all suppliers and subcontractors out there should be operating a safe work site. So you should have safety management systems, policies and procedures in place, irrespective whether it's a FSC applicable job. So the first point of call is to look at the tender documents from those delivery partners, so who you're tendering to, and see what they are asking you to do. The requirements will vary depending on supplier, subcontractor, funding, what level of risk is involved. However, notwithstanding that, you may be asked to do any one of these things or all of them. Work in accordance with your clients or your buyer's work health and safety management system. You may need to undertake work health and safety inspections. You might need to have your safe work method statements reviewed, and typically they ask for them in the tender pack, as I've alluded to before. You need to demonstrate that your workers are qualified, and that possibly includes RIW. You possibly need to onboard any plant that you're going to bring onto the site to ensure that it's safe and complies with the contractor's requirements, and not to mention any inductions. If you think about this from a liability perspective, the head contractor or the delivery partner is responsible for providing a safe work site. They're responsible for ensuring everyone is safe. So therefore, they implement their work health and safety management system, and they ask you to follow that. They also will ask you to have your own documents to validate that you deliver work in a safe manner. One of the other compliance requirements, this more so to the trucking and heavy vehicle industry, is the chain of responsibility and the heavy vehicle national law. So this is a national scheme for facilitating and regulating the use of heavy vehicles on roads. And there's a number of bullet points there of the reason or what it actually does. So there's some new laws from 1 October 2018. Everyone in the supply chain shares responsibility for the heavy vehicle national, that breaches of the heavy vehicle national law do not occur, and an obligation to eliminate or minimise potential harm or loss by doing all that is reasonably practical to ensure safety. So again, we're coming back to that safety management system and the necessary policies and procedures that you need to follow, need to have in your business, and you need to follow to ensure that you're performing work safely. And you're saying to your prime contractor that you're doing it in accordance with the heavy vehicle national law. So there's a number of things that you can read if this applies to you on the NHVR website, and the links there for you to read in your own time. Plant and equipment. So it's super important that you provide safe and effective, and if you're thinking about it from a cost perspective, a productive plant and equipment. And Inland Rail and ARTC, this is of the utmost importance to them. So all operational plants supplied on ARTC sites shall comply with those components, or the list of items there. Okay, so getting the compliance. We've spoken about the compliance. Now let's talk about tendering. So I'm just going to take a step back very, very briefly and just talk about how the tendering and the quoting process have changed. So in the past, it used to be word of mouth, particularly out in the regions, or referrals. I need this access track constructed. Can you help us out? Yep, I've got a dozer, I've got a grader, I've got a water truck. I can help you out, no problems at all. You'd get a walk-up start. You'd be in the right place at the right time. No one from interstate would come here and take your work because this is your backyard. You might even do work through subcontracting arrangements. However, times have changed, and these 4 points, what I call procurement principles, and the procurement principles of value for money, encouraging competition, efficiency and accountability, transparency, what are driving people to go to tenders. What are driving these companies to be more comprehensive in how they approach the market and choose the right subcontractors and suppliers. They need to ensure they're getting a value for money outcome. They need to encourage competition with you and your competitors in the local area to ensure that they're getting the best bang for buck. They need to be efficient in the way that they're going to tender, and it needs to be accountable and in some regards transparent. If it's a shareholder, well, they've got shareholders in the business, they need to say to the shareholders, we're doing this in an accountable and transparent manner. And that's why we see a lot of tenders in the federal, state and local government areas, and it's always a formal process. One thing that you may not know is who's assessing your tender. So after you've submitted your expression of interest in ICN, you're invited to tender. You've received your tender pack, you've submitted your tender, well then who looks at it? You normally have the following 3 people, so there would normally be a chair, so someone who is running that tender evaluation assessment. You would normally have a technical specialist in that field of work, whatever you're tendering for, and then you would normally have a procurement or an estimating person who would be looking at the costs. So remember, when they tender a particular works package, they have a number in mind. They might think that it's going to come out $1 million. So when they receive your tender and your tender's 1.3 million or your tender's 600,000, in the first instance, they might say, wow, you're expensive. What are you allowing for? In the second example, they might say, wow, what have you missed out on? What have you forgotten to include? So they have what's called a pre-tender estimate, who the procurement team will develop, and they'll do that in-house. The technical specialist will look at the quality of your bid and your methodology, and the chair will also do the assessment, and then they'll facilitate the discussions. I wanted to show you this slide again about what you will get when you receive the tender, and then I wanted to jump on to the Windows Explorer again and show you a couple of tips and tricks on how I save tender documents and how I'd recommend you to save tender documents and operate what I call your electronic document management system. And I'll show you that with those documents that we had before. So you'll get this slide in the slide deck, so you don't need to copy this down, but fundamentally what you can see here is 21/1020, which is 2021 October and the 20th. So that was the due date of this particular tender. It was a drainage tender and it was to Seymour White Constructions. 21/11/30, so the 30th of November 2021, there was a retaining wall tender and that was to Lend-Lease. I always recommend to keep a template folder structure, which is year, month, day. So when you get your new tender, all you need to do is copy that and you paste it, and then you just rename it to the current tender and when that one is due. Inside this particular folder, I recommend that you have 3 folders. You might have more, you might have less, but I recommend 3 as a starting point. The first one is your final submission, so that the documents that you submit to your buyer. And the reason why I say that, and you might say to me, Steve, that's really silly. Of course, we're going to have a folder, but the number of businesses that I've worked in that I go there and say, can you show me the latest, your final submission of that tender, you know, to ABC? Oh, yeah. So we had that, but we needed to get it signed. So here it is here, but here's the sign page that's over there, and oh, I forgot to save the final pricing because we changed it on the day. So in essence, they don't have that snapshot in time of what they physically submitted to their client. So always have the number 1 folder, which is final. The working docs is what I call the dumping ground. You can just throw whatever documents you like in there, anything that will help you in responding to that tender, and that includes your returnable schedules. The third folder that I recommend is a copy of the original unedited tender documents. So as you received from your buyer. So don't edit these ones, you just leave them in there, and that's the snapshot in time of what you received at the beginning of the tender process. And then on the right hand side, these are some of the documents that I've saved in the tender docs, but I'll use the ones that I showed you a bit earlier on. So let's go ahead and have a look at that now. Okay, so these are the ARTC tender pack that I showed you. They're in the zip file. For those of you that don't know, you can just right click and extract them all, and then you'll get this, and you can just extract those documents just here. So there they are there, all of the documents. So here is our tenders folder, the one that I showed you, and there's our template folder. So this is a tender, and let's assume that it's due on the 20th of December 2021. So I want to copy that folder. I want to paste it, and this is on the 2021, the 12th, 20, and this is a tender for drainage again, and that's to transform saving that there. I'm grabbing the documents that we extracted, and these are the unedited documents. So I'm cutting those. And I'm pasting them into the folder number 3. Them there. So this is day one. The tender's just arrived and we've now set up our electronic document management system ready to start responding to a tender, which I'll get to in a couple of slides. One step that I'll show you now to help you navigate through all of these documents. What I do, and I've done it in this tender, this folder here, just to save a bit of time. You can see here that I've created a PDF of each of the Word documents. And the reason why I've done that is I join all those PDFs together, and you can do that with, I'm selecting a couple, combine files in an Acrobat. So I've got Adobe Acrobat, and the reason why I've combined all of those files together is that I've got a full tender pack of 158 pages of all of the documents that are applicable for this particular tender. So for example, as I'm going to read this and we're going to go through the step-by-step process on how to respond to tenders. But the reason why I love doing this, and I do this for every single tender that I work on, is if I read it today and then in a week's time, I come back and I go, oh, I just needed to know some more information about payment, the payment terms. What are the payment terms for Transform Rail? Instead of opening up individual documents, you just let the power of the search do all the hard work for you. So this is talking about the declaration of compliance. That's not my answer. It's not my answer. Pricing. There you go. Time for payment for this particular tender is within 20 days, date of receipt of a valid claim. So that's on page 42. If I were to try to find the answer in all of these documents, it would take me minutes, if not hours, as opposed to a couple of seconds. So that's just a bit of a tip that I do with all of my tenders. And if for those of you that are seasoned veterans in tenders, and if you get an addendum, so what an addendum is a change to the tender documents. I also save it in this folder as a PDF. And then what I do is I always put my addendum at the beginning of the document. So it's the very first thing that you see when you open up your 00 complete. And for those of you that are sitting there and going, why did Steve call it 00 complete? Because it's always the top of this document. So if this was labelled complete, it would be down here in between the A's and the D's. So it's always at the top of my folder. Because remember, responding to tenders takes time. So if I can give you back 10 minutes or give you back an hour using a technique like this, you're going to save so much time in the tender period. It's more time to do work and earn money, more time to spend with the family, less time to burn the midnight oil. Okay, so let's go back and continue on with the presentation, and we'll come back to this shortly. Okay, so we've now done that. We've set up our electronic document management system with our 3 folders. We've saved all of the tender docs into that folder number 3, and now we're ready to start responding to the tender. The first step that I recommend everyone to do, and it might sound pretty simple, is to read all of the documents. And that will allow you to do a go, no go. And what that means is you're reading all of the documents and then you're going to make an informed decision whether this is right for you or not right for you. So for example, I had an arborist contact me and said, hey Steve, I've got this tender. Do you think it's good for our business? I had a look at the documents with him and I said, this is a tender for a Cert 4 to do tree assessments, not necessarily for cutting down trees. So that wasn't the right tender for him. So that was a no-go. When I say reading all of the documents, what I physically do is I close my email and I turn off my phone or put it on silent and I shut my door to the best of our ability in this lovely COVID time with our kids sometimes at home. I get it. But I read the documents, that 158 pages from woe to go. I read it from the start to the finish. And I've already showing you that I do this by creating that single PDF, that 00 complete. And then when I read something that says for me to do something, so for example, the contractor must submit code compliance, I add it to my task list. So that thing on the right-hand side, the graphic on the right-hand side, is just a template from Microsoft Word where you can search for task list, and you can get a task list if you don't have one. If you've got your own task list or action list, you can do that. If you like to use a diary, that's no problems at all. But just keep a single document where all of the tasks, all of the things that you need to do. So the step 2, as you're reading through the document, the tender, from the start to the finish, is instead of highlighting, and I brought this highlighter out for you for the presentation, instead of using one of those guys and highlighting something like this and saying that's really important and leaving these 2 pages of the 158 pages of your tender document that you've printed out, what I do is I read it electronically, and if this was important, I use the commenting feature within Adobe and I highlight it there. And the reason why I do that is if I'm back on page 1 and I go, oh, I remember reading something about payment, I can look at this and go, this is where I am, and it was on page 42. So this, you'll get a few comments down the side, but at least this is sort of your table of contents of all of the important things, and then you add it to your task list. If you need to go and speak to your accounts department about payment terms, if that's different to what you would normally do. Step 3, so after you've read the whole document, it's 158 pages, you've created your task list of all the things that you need to do. You need to fill out your pricing, you've got to submit your insurances, you need to be code compliant. I'm not asking you to do any of those tasks yet, I just want you to write them down as tasks. Then you hold a meeting with your team, and your team might be with your wife. I understand there are very small teams out there. If you're a larger business, you might call in your operations manager, or you might call in your engineer, or you might call in your head chef, and you say, this is the opportunity. Here's the Soldiers 5 on what we need to do and what we've been asked to do. Here are all the tasks. Do you think it's a good opportunity for our business? So what we're doing again is our go, no go. We're doing it again to make sure that we're submitting a tender to an opportunity that we can win. We'll then discuss all of the tasks, and then we'll allocate those tasks to the best people to do them. So you don't have to do them all on your own. And then we can agree on a timeline to do those tasks. So what I've got here is, you might remember that was our business development, to call those people. So that's in the calendar for us to do. Now we've had a tender land, we might not need to do those, but now we need to hold our startup meeting, which is this one here. And in our startup meeting, we've agreed that we're going to have our first draft complete on Thursday, and then we're going to have another health check meeting on Friday morning. And then we're going to have our second draft the following week. We're going to have our second health check to make sure that we're all on track. And then what I recommend is, even though it's due on that 20th that we agreed, I try to submit it the day before. So you're not subject to the internet falling out, the power going out, or you being called out to a particular job, because I understand everyone needs to make money and they've got to do, what they need to do to make money. So I recommend, much like I did last night with a security client of mine, she submitted last night at 11 o'clock prior to today because she had to do the kid drop off. Then she had some business meetings and it was due at 11 a.m. today. So I got an email this morning to say that she submitted last night, which was absolutely perfect. So there's a couple of tips for setting you up for success when getting all of those documents, thinking, wow, there are a lot of documents. How do I read them? We want to create our 00 complete. Single PDF of all of the documents, read them, hold our meeting, agree on the milestones, and then we can start responding, which is where we're up to now. Then you can set some time in your calendar, because I know that you'll need to go to work and you'll need to start earning money, or someone might be at your shop front. I understand that, but you can now create that time to respond to individual questions, and you know how many questions you've got. Imagine doing the analysis 2 days before it's due, and then you realise you need to submit all of this documentation and you've got only 1 day to go. That's not the best way to respond to tenders. And by doing it this way, you're starting 2 weeks out, and you've got 2 full weeks with you and your team to prepare your tender. In this step number 4, you might have responded to tenders before. I strongly advise against grabbing your previous one and using that as your response template. I strongly recommend you get the response schedules, for example, from Transform Rail, and then you go to that recent tender, you copy that information and you paste it in, you paste unformatted text and you highlight it yellow, and then you customize it, which is your response for this tender. That will then prevent you from including previous company names in a tender to Transform Rail or the delivery partner. It will make your responses specific to what you're actually tendering for, and it will improve the quality of your response. I've heard me say paste unformatted text. I'll show you that in 1 second. Pasting into the response document. The reason why I use this quality process is you probably wouldn't, or you'd be a lower likelihood to submit a tender with all yellow highlighting. So it brings attention to that particular part of the document to ensure you do something with it. So you know you need to, oh, that's right, I got a phone call just after I pasted that. I need to change that response or update that pricing. Always start with a blank response and start responding early so you know what you're in for. So let's do a demo and have a look at how I respond to tenders. So if we go back to this particular document, and let's just pretend that this other Word document that I showed earlier on today was my response document. So these are some of the questions. So this could be capability. There's our heading, and that could be the question that we're responding to. So you might want to do that in a different color, which is no problems at all. And then we're typing our responses here. That's a response that we need to do something with, so we're always highlighting that yellow. So if we go back to this tender and we're reading this, so this is the invitation to tender. So this is the beginning of that 00 complete document. This is telling us a whole bunch of stuff of what we need to do, that important information. Remember, we're grabbing that important information, we're putting it onto our task list, if that makes sense. This is the form of tender that we need to fill out. So you would be filling this out in the Word document that they gave you. Similarly with this declaration of compliance. But let's just pretend we needed to respond to this particular question. So I'm going to copy that text and I'm going to paste into this particular document. I'm right clicking and I'm choosing keep text only. Or you can come up here into the paste special, and that's the unformatted text. It's the same thing. What that does is it prevents you from pasting text that carries across the formatting from the original document. Then you can apply whichever formatting you like, the way that you're responding. As you can see here, we know that if we're reading this, we're going fantastic, it's all done. Oh, hang on, what's this? We need to change that. Oh, that was there just to jog my memory. I'll get rid of it. Okay, now we're ready to go. Now we're looking pretty good. So that document now is ready to PDF or to submit back, depending on what we want to do. If we come back to the presentation, what do we do before we submit? So we have our task list, and remember when we did the analysis, when we read through the document on day one, we were cool, calm and collected. We were nowhere near that tender submission date and time. So our task list is nice and comprehensive. It was accurate for what we did at that particular point in time. And then we get to just tick off all of those items. And one of those items might have been the mandatory criteria. So the things that we have to do to conform. What was the thing that we had to submit? Could almost guarantee it'll be the building code, and it would be the work health and safety documents to show that you comply with the Federal Safety Commissioner's accreditation if it was above 4 million for your subcontract package. Do a spell check. So you might have seen on the document that I've been playing around in, there was a spelling error, or there were actually two, and I'll show you how we do that in a second. I always recommend that someone else other than yourself reads the response for accuracy, and then we always save that final version into the #1 final folder. You want to archive all of the previous versions or put them in the working folder and just leave them there. And then we need to submit to the buyer in accordance with their submission instructions, which you would have written down in your task list when you were doing the initial analysis, because what it will say is you need to submit the tender in, whether it's Tenderlink, whether it's RCN, whether it's on their own portal. So let's go ahead and look at that Word document and spell check. So here we are looking at a word that is spelt wrong, and we've got colour, which is not picking up. And for those of you that know Microsoft Word, when you spell something wrong, it usually has a red highlight underneath, a red underline. That's not happening in this case. Why is that? So a bit of a tip for you. You select all of the text, Control A. You go up to the Review tab and you go to Language and you set the proofing language. We can see here that it's highlighted as United States. So we want to check the Australia. What I recommend is you check that box and you uncheck them again to reset the spell checker. It's still not having that red underline. The second thing that you need to do is a hidden setting. There's always a hidden setting in Microsoft Word. File, Options, Proofing, and down here on the bottom, who would have thought? Hide spelling errors in this document. Let's untick that and let's untick that. Let's click OK. Voila. Our incorrectly spelled words in Australian is now, we can see, and now we can choose the correct words. Now we can run the spell checker and we're good to go. So that's a bit of a tip around spell check. If you're staring at a word and the spell checker is not doing its job, check those two things. In the Review tab, Language, Set Proofing Language, those two boxes, make sure they're unticked. File, Options, Proofing, make sure these are unticked. And sometimes if there's a number in a word, ignore words that contain numbers. You just need to make sure that's unticked as well. And I see quite often in uppercase, sometimes the spell checker ignores words in uppercase. So I always have that unticked. Hopefully you got some, you didn't know that, and hopefully you can take that away and implement that across your business now. Okay, tips on managing contracts. So we're in right at the last part of the presentation. Okay, so expression of interest through ICN, winner, winner, chicken dinner. We're invited to tender. We've submitted our tender. We've created our 00 complete. We've analysed. We've filled it all out. We've submitted it in accordance with the instructions. You've got the telephone call or the letter. Congratulations. Your preferred is the term that you'll get. Then you'll negotiate your contract. You'll sign the contract, and then you're doing the job. So some of the top tips to manage contracts more effectively. Again, from non-lawyers perspective, I'm just a civil engineer. The first thing that I do, and that one of the biggest lessons that I've learned over my career and by speaking with a number of different businesses, is to understand the contract. If you don't understand the contract, and a lot of people say it's just gobbledygook and they put it in their top drawer, you need to get necessary legal advice to understand what to watch out for. So you need to understand the contract. Second thing that I recommend to do is understand if there are things called time bars. And time bars, particularly in the construction industry, when we're working to those tier 1 contractors, a time bar is something that prevents you from allowing to make a time or a cost claim. For example, they might say within 5 days of noting this, you need to inform us. If you don't tell us within those 5 days, you're not able to make a time or a cost claim against us. Every contract's different. That's why you need to seek your legal advice. But I just ask you to look through the contract to see if there are any time bars. The third thing, my third top tip about contracts is understanding what the variation clause is. What are your entitlements under this contract for variations? Don't assume that, oh, I'll just ask for a variation. You've got to understand what the mechanism is for a variation, and there are a number of different ways to get variations. Right at the beginning, when you're all friends, read the contract and understand the variation clause. Like the variation clause, top tip number 4 is to understand what the extension of time claim is. The extension of time claim is, what are the precedents? What are the things that need to trigger an extension of time claim? So if it's wet weather, do you get additional time to do your work? Depends on the contract. If you hit rock, do you get additional time to do your work? You might not. For example, the GC21 contract, there's one box. If that box is ticked, you're not allowed to make any claims against the government if you've accepted all latent conditions. Tip number 5, know and understand the correct payment claim process. So speaking with a number of businesses like you in the regions, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. It's all about cash flow. So when you're doing all that hard work and you've got to wait till the 25th of the month to submit your claim, which you've done patiently, you've absorbed all of the cash flow to date. You submit your payment claim. You get an email back a day later, a week later. I'm sorry, Steve, you haven't submitted X, Y, and Z. You need to resubmit it. It resets your payment claim potentially, depending on the payment claim clause. Resets that time frame for them to pay you. Understand what the correct payment claim process is before you submit your first payment claim. Let's take a look at one of the contracts for this which is the supply contract for Transform Rail. So this is the hire agreement. So in here, there's this is a template, as you can see. Has a covering schedule, which is what the commencement date, what the end date is, what the governing law is, what the site is, premise, what the level of public liability insurance is, what the project is, and who the head contract is between, or who the head contractor is. Might have a list of equipment. We've already talked about payment claim, so 20 business days of date of receipt of valid claim. Keywords there is a valid claim, and the frequency is 1 claim per month on the 25th day of each month. Down here we'll detail what the works description is. So what are you actually doing? Day dockets, minimum standards. So what needs to be on a day docket for those of you in that industry? Now we're getting into the conditions for hire of equipment. Security of payment, what that means, what your responsibilities are. We do a word search for variation. Here's the variation clause. ABC Rail may give the hirer a variation price request. What this means is within 5 business days of them giving you what's called a VPR, you must provide ABC Rail with a response. And that response typically is what's the change in cost and what's the change in time, typically. And then they may issue you with a variation order to do that variation work. Where that variation order has been issued, the item 2 of equipment and charges, which was the table that we saw earlier on, will be updated in accordance with the variation order, and then you can add it to your payment claim. You can't claim for something that it's not on your claim schedule. So that's just a couple of examples out of this contract that you would need to understand before you sign that and to do business with that delivery partner. And every contract's different. So, you know, this is only a template contract. Some of these clauses might be not used like this one, or it might be used in the next one. We don't know. It's just an example. Whilst I'm on this page, you can see down here, if I just zoom in, depending on the type of documents they've requested during tender time, you might need to deliver these documents as part of your contract period. And if you do need to provide an Australian industry participation plan to tell your delivery partner what your local content is, how many trainees you're using on the site, what your Indigenous participation is, they need that for their Australian industry participation plan back up to Inland Rail. That takes time, it takes money. Have you allowed for that in your price? They're all the things that you need to think about. Coming back to the presentation, top tips, don't put in the top drawer. Read the contract, please. Read it, read it, read it. Have a good document management system. So I've shown you what I use in the tendering space. So you'll need something when you deliver a contract. In those documents, I've read that some of the delivery partners are using electronic document management systems like Acconex or RIB, which is a web-based electronic document management system. Avoid leaving variations to the end because there's no guarantee that you'll get that money for doing that work. I'm a big one in contracts administration to communicate it early. So there are some people that say, you know, the contract is the last resort, which is kind of true, but you should always communicate early, whether it's a variation, whether it's an extension of time, whether it's a restriction of access to the site, whether you can't get on, whether it's inductions, whether it's rain, hail or shine. So always communicate early and then finalise or formalise what you've discussed in writing to your client. If there are any problems, always present solutions. That allows you to have a really good working relationship with your delivery partner. And last but not least, that's it. So 1:30, thank you so much for staying online with me and listening to this webinar. I hope that you've taken away some things. I hope that I can help you win work. I'm passionate to hear from Jason how we can improve those numbers as the program continues, and I look forward to hopefully answering some questions now. I think we've got about 30 minutes to answer some questions. If we don't answer them all, we can definitely come back to you at a later stage. So thanks so much. Thanks, Steve.
In terms of the Q&A, we've been responding to majority of questions as we go. I guess I'd like to open it up to those couple of hundred people that are still on the line at the moment, whether you would like to pose any questions direct to Steve. So we'll leave that going for a couple of minutes. I'll revert back to our slide pack and just run you through the last few slides. And if there's no no additional questions, then we'll close the session. So on the screen at the moment, I guess from an ARTC perspective, we do work very closely with a range of government bodies and industry associations. And so we're quite aware of the range of support that is out there for businesses across the country to upskill for major project opportunities. So yeah, on your screen, we provided you with a list of national bodies. So the Australian government's got a website, AI Group, Regional Development Australia, Social Traders, etc. There's a couple of organisations within New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, and also some industry associations. So by all means, reach out to those organisations for additional assistance that they may be able to help you. In addition to the session that you've attended today, ARTC Inland Rail have also got a sustainability capability development program. On our website, we do have 3 webinars available. They're all quite succinct, so 10 to 15 minute sessions, and they've been prepared in collaboration with the Eco-Efficiency Group. We've provided you with the web link to those webinars on the bottom of the page. In addition to the webinars, there is some free sustainability mentoring available. So through the Inland Rail Skills Academy, hour-long mentoring sessions on sustainability practices are available with the Eco-Efficiency Group. Businesses are able to focus on a topic of their choice. There are some eligibility requirements involved. So you are required to complete the business sustainability webinar series, so those 3 webinars, and you also must be local to Inland Rail's project area. So the project area are the local government areas in which the rail corridor runs through. We've also provided you with a range of contact points for or within the Inland Rail program. So the first one is our supplier's email address. All of your inquiries that you send to our suppliers are managed by our supply chain team. Likewise, if you have any employment inquiries, they can be directed to our recruitment team. General inquiries go to our general email address, and any project-specific inquiries you may have can be directed to our stakeholder engagement teams through the various states. In the current screen I'm working in at the moment, I don't have access to see whether there's any additional questions coming through. Okay, I do see, there's one question there in relation to Tenderlink. The Tenderlink site for Inland Rail is a distinct site from Tenderlink for ARTC. So yeah, so I would highly recommend, if you'd like to supply to ARTC and also Inland Rail, that you register your business details in both platforms, and then you'll be notified of opportunities through both parts of ARTC. There's a question in relation to the slide pack for future reference. Yes, so details for today's webinar will be provided to all attendees shortly, so in the next day or 2. It's the webinar itself will be uploaded to the Inland Rail website. The presentation slide pack will also be emailed out in PDF format to those people that have been on the line today. Great. Well, I guess in closing, I'd like to thank today's presenters. So David Watt, our Head of Commercial here at ARTC Inland Rail, and Steven Vermey, Principal of Scarp Vantage Consulting, based down in Wollongong, New South Wales. My colleagues here at ARTC who assisted to pull this webinar together today, and each and every one of the 700 of you that watched today's session. A copy of, as I've just mentioned, a copy of the presentation slides, supporting documents and details for where participants can access a copy of the recording will be distributed shortly. We have had a number of questions today. Feel free to make use of the IR Suppliers email address if there are other questions that you would like answered. And finally, we will be sending out a post-webinar survey in the next day or two. Your feedback on today's session, as well as what you'd like to hear from us in future sessions, is invaluable. So please complete the survey. If there's no additional questions, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you very much.